Good evening, everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of Dyer's Place. And tonight, as you can tell by the background and the title, we are talking Trek. We are Star Trekking across the universe, etc., etc. If you ever heard the song, you know how it goes. Anyway, with me as always is Mike.
Oh yeah, that song has lyrics. Seldom known fact, actually.
Yes, it actually does have lyrics. Also with us tonight would be our special guests here. You may remember both of them from some of our previous roundtables. We have Eugene.
Hello. And that song also has a music video, if I recall.
Oh, I gotta look that up. And also with us is Earl from the Logbook.
Howdy, everyone.
All right, so let's see if we got anyone kicking around yet. Well, if anyone is out there, you can hear us and it sounds fine, let us know. And
you guys can't see this, but I am mesmerized by Earl's streaming setup. He looks like he has a command center of, I don't know if those are all Funkos or just different collectibles, but the lighting, and it's pretty incredible.
Oh, yeah, that's a hell of a setup.
Yeah.
It's just my happy place.
I'm going to subscribe to your channel just for that.
Good idea. Plus, you get to see some really good videos. So, on the subject of Trek here, Eugene. Now, why don't you tell us a little about your involvement with Trek as far as what you've done with the series so far?
Oh, well, to be honest, my first involvement with Star Trek was actually the first. This is maybe a whole other story, but the very first thing that I ever actually wrote, completed, and submitted for potential, we'll call it publication, was a screenplay, telescript for Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I sent it to Paramount, and it came back to me after a very long time, longer than I expected. But that's technically my first attempt to be a professional author or writer. But I guess my claim to quote fame is with my friend Tori Atkinson. We originated the Star Trek rewatch at Tor.com, which is now Reactor, which was I guess it was a weekly or bi-weekly blog series where we were watching every episode of Star Trek, and I, of course, had seen them many times, and Tori had seen some of them, but not all of them. So you kind of had this like hardcore Trekkie perspective on each episode, and then you had sort of a newbie perspective on each episode, and we would discuss the episode, like what we thought of it. We'd kind of rate it on a warp factor, and then we would also discuss kind of its place in the history of Star Trek, but then also the history of the United States and the world and its relevance there. And so we went through the entire original series, and then we started another blog called The View Screen, where we started Star Trek: The Next Generation, and we're sort of on a very extended hiatus from that. We haven't said that we're never going to finish it, but we have stalled out like in season 3, I think. So that's my big contribution, I guess, to Star Trek fandom.
Your mistake was starting with season 1. No, I'm just kidding.
Truth be told, that's how I discovered you originally, Eugene.
Yeah, which I find incredible. That's amazing.
Yeah. And didn't you say that you, in one of your last streams that I watched, that you know David Mack?
I do, yes. Dave's a friend of ours. I met him through my wife. We knew a lot of writers when we lived in New York City, and he is one of them. And he actually picked up the Star Trek rewatch, I think, with... trying to remember the other author who worked with him on them, but he also continued doing some of the rewatches there. And I guess my other claim to fame, if that's what you're driving at, is this was totally a surprise to me until he told me about it well after the fact. But in one of his novels, he named me as a captain of the starship Repulse in his novel, his Vanguard novel, Storming Heaven. So I am on the Star Trek memory beta wiki as a side canon Star Trek character. And he couldn't. I don't think he knew this, but I actually really love the Miranda class starships. This is the design of them, and the Repulse is a Miranda class ship. And I don't think he killed me off either, which is also very nice. So it wasn't just like naming me and then killing me off because he needed cannon fodder, you know.
Well, at least there's that. So, and Earl, you have had some extensive work with Star Trek. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I am the technical director for several shows at Roddenberry Podcast, including Mission Log and the Mission Log live streaming events. I am also tech director for the Trek Talks Telethon, which is an annual streaming event benefiting Hollywood Food Coalition, which this year's was delayed by the LA fires. It is now rescheduled for April 5th. So barely a month away. It's 8 hours of a convention that you don't necessarily have to put on pants for. Now, me, because I'm on camera greeting all of these people who have actually been on various shows, I have to wear pants. But you don't.
Good bonus.
Yeah, it's good to know.
And also at Roddenberry, I am co-host of a weekly podcast called Genealogy, where we are going back through Gene Roddenberry's pre-Star Trek scripts and shows to see if we can find, any trace of sort of the messaging that he would work into Star Trek later. And we have just completed our coverage of a 1960 Western called Wrangler, which we discovered was the first show Gene ever created that got past the pilot stage, although that fact is not reflected in his Wikipedia entry, his official biography, because not all of the show was good. I think he elected to bury it, but we went and unburied it.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd never even heard about that.
Yeah, it's been a ride. I thought, when I pitched the show a long time ago, I thought I knew what the journey was going to be. It has turned out to be a whole other, different, challenging thing, quite frankly.
I'm going to have to start catching up on some of those videos. I've seen you post them, but, things happen and they get shuffled aside. So I think I need to start watching these now.
Same.
So, compared to both of you, Mike and I are just mere fans.
Yeah, I can't say I've done nearly as much extensive work in the field of Trek. I was just born the son of a Trekkie, and I just kind of naturally gravitated towards the series from there. I mean, it took me a while for me to actually really get into it, but I always did have I always did have an affection for the original series and for the Next Generation. Like many years ago, my brother and I viewed the entirety of the first 2 seasons of the original series, and then we petered out a few episodes into the 3rd, which turned out to not be the worst point to stop, honestly. But
Weird.
But then I got even more earnestly into Trek when fucking 2020 hit, and I figured a good way to wait out that hell year would just be to view every single episode of Trek that was available to me on Netflix at the time, back when I had a Netflix account before, that whole setup got shitified. But so that means within a period of roughly 6 months, I slammed down all the original series, all of the Next Generation, all of Deep Space Nine, all of Voyager, and all of Enterprise, for better or worse. I had to go somewhere else to watch all the animated series, but nonetheless, that had me covered for every single episode of. I don't know if there's a better way to put it. I just call it pre-break Trek. Like, all the Trek before it took a hiatus and then came back with the movies and then with Discovery later and so forth. Like, I don't know if there's a better designation for that, but yeah, I am just a fan and nothing more, and my memory is that of an anti-elephant, but I think I've seen enough Trek to contribute to this podcast. At least I sure hope so.
I think you have.
You technically have seen more than I have because I
Oh.
will be honest. I have never finished watching Enterprise. I bailed on it.
Honestly.
And I keep meaning to go back to it to finish it off at some point. Mainly because I played what's that? Seen It. Have you guys played the game Seen It? Like it's
Yeah, it's been a long time, but yeah.
yeah. So
I've
played
seen it, but
with
I
a bunch
haven't
of-
seen it.
Oh, shut up.
I played Seen It with some friends, and I was very good at it, except when they were Enterprise related trivia questions, and then I was completely at a loss. I was like, I have this big gap in my Trek knowledge, which I'm not in a rush to finish watching it, but I feel like I have to at some point.
Eugene,
But
I feel
in the
like
moment,
less
I
of a
couldn't do it.
fan for viewing all of Enterprise. I think you've won out on that one personally, but just in my opinion.
Okay, guys, real quick, I just want to say hello to Betty. She is here in the
Hey,
chat.
Betty.
Hi, Betty.
What up?
My
Hello,
lovely wife. And
Betty OMG.
that's her. And she is also not really a fan of Enterprise.
Ah, good taste.
But as far as me, my biggest claim to fame regarding Star Trek would be the unofficial crossover a friend of mine and I wrote for over the course of about 10 years between 95 and 2005. It was a Star Wars Star Trek crossover. And I tried to stay true to the characterizations of, all the characters we used. It was basically, Star Wars post Return of the Jedi and the cast of Next Generation in between, I think, Insurrection and Nemesis. And we also had Q in there. We had the Borg. No Queen, just the Borg.
Indeed.
But
I laughed when you said Star Trek Star Wars crossover, but that's not the wildest crossover you could think of, and that's also not the wildest crossover that we've gotten. So
that's true. A side note, just for fun, I also wrote a 2-part series called The Game, which was also a crossover, and the catalyst for all the events that happened in both those stories was Q. And he brought together characters from series like Lord of the Rings. There was RoboCop, Predator, again Star Wars, and a few other ones. And he would
Automan?
No Automan. I stuck to series I actually knew. And what he would do is he'd take different individuals from these, different franchises and throw them into one particular place. Like in the second one, I had him take Ash from Evil Dead, Aragorn from Lord of the Rings, and what's his name there?
Stephen Hiller?
Yeah, Stephen Hiller from Independence Day. And he threw him into Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
and just to see what happens.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, his goal was to get the Shankara stones, and it was just a game he wanted to play. And at the end, I revealed that him and Gandalf were old friends. But yeah, that's
what
about
does the Q need with Shankara stones?
just to say you could do it.
I mean, that's like asking what God needs with a starship.
That's what I was going for.
Exactly. Which is probably the best line out of that entire movie. I'm also fond of the bit where it's like, was Sybok asked Sulu when they're about to go land in the Enterprise shuttle bay. It's like, have you ever done this before? Actually, it's my first try.
That movie has some good moments and some good lines. I remember I really liked the scene where Kirk, Spock, and McCoy are in the brig, and Spock is telling him about Sybok, and Kirk's like, "Oh, you're sorry." That's it's just like that whole thing. It's just like, okay.
Yeah, and
Well
Bones,
then.
Bones like, you want me to hold him, Jim?
It kind of reminds me of the meme that someone made from that scene. Sybok is actually my half brother, and Kirk says different mothers, and Spock says shark attack.
Nice.
And Kirk also has a really awesome T-shirt in that movie, the one that says like "Go climb a rock." I mean, that's great.
Yeah, I think they even referenced that on Lower Decks too at one point, didn't they?
Sounds
I'm
right.
sure they did.
I'm sure they've referenced everything on Lower Decks at some point or another, and it's a matter of whether you noticed it or not.
I can swear Boimler was wearing that shirt at one point.
Yeah, yes, I remember that.
But yeah, speaking of Lower Decks here, if you take a look at our avatars, if you know anything about Trek, you should recognize who each of them represent. So, yes, Earl has a moopsie. I, too, have a moopsie.
See,
I will be liquid before the evening is out. Thank you for listening.
Eugene, you have a giant pink tribble.
More troubles, more troubles.
Yep, the original animated series.
Yes.
And Mike, Garrick. Plain, simple Garrick.
yeah, it's. I think that's the most appropriate one that could have possibly been made for me. So,
I'm such a simple tailor.
And I can basically sum up mine in one phrase. He's dead, Jim. McCoy has always been my favorite Star Trek character. Like, ever.
I'm Skippy.
So, closely followed by Scotty. So, that said, how did each of us get involved in, even watching the series in the first place? Earl, what was your origin?
I think mine was probably a result of just bursting into Star Wars fandom the moment Star Wars was released. And then, I went home and it's like, oh, I need more Star Wars. And my mom, probably out of desperation, found the local station that had the Star Trek reruns and sat me down in front of those every afternoon. I can't say that I really got it at that point, but when Star Trek the Motion Picture was coming, yeah, by then it's like, okay, here we go. We're on the big screen now. This is a big deal. My boys are back. I think I initially misunderstood the motion picture as being the origin story. Yeah, I thought it was like the 2009 movie. I didn't understand that it was after the series. And I think it took like a couple of rewatches on TV. It was like, oh, this is okay. Yeah. But I was, a fan of each movie as it came along. And right around the time Next Gen came along, I was entering a really rough phase of my teenage life. And I will tell you right now, the reason I'm here to even talk about it is because I latched onto that show like I did. And then what makes Star Trek did sink in. That, this is about things we ought to be doing, the people we ought to be. And like Eugene, I was one of those people who submitted a spec script to Paramount, which was this process that involved writing to them, getting this packet of release forms back that basically you're signing away your firstborn. And, even if they come up with something identical, just by signing that form, you are unable to sue them. But I'm sure everyone was pitching the same stories at them. I remember mine was about another appearance by Riker's dad. And then I had the horrifying realization later, oh, wait, this is actually about me and my dad, and I just wrote a giant Gary Stew. And then submitted it, and some poor WGA intern at Paramount had to read it. And I think that one came back to me in like a month. It wasn't good, but it was a lot of work. And around the time that magazines like Starlog were full of the story of Ronald D. Moore, fan-made good, who did break in via... Well, he didn't really break in via spec script because he was dating someone who worked on the lot. And so he was able to game that system and get his script looked at, and that got him hired. So, no doubt a good script, but still he had an edge that the rest of us did not have. But I was thinking to myself, oh, okay, well, if he got in, I can get in. I'm going to take my best shot at it. But what that did do was all of my fandom got me interested in TV production, which kind of wound up being my career. not in Hollywood, but on a very local level. And so many aspects of my life just kind of ripple outward from Star Trek. And, the fact that I do work for Roddenberry Podcast now it's this crazy circle that if someone told past me about it, I don't think he would quite believe it. Or there's an equal chance he would become a smug bastard and wouldn't shut up about it. I try to kind of soft pedal it now because, it's the job and I don't want to misrepresent. And also my existence on the internet, unlike a lot of people's, is I'm not out there chasing clout.
Yeah.
I hear that.
So you shouldn't be. Fair, sir.
Yep. That's great how it came kind of full circle like that for you, though.
Yeah, it's an unlikely story, but you know what? I will take it. It kind of pays off all the crap young me went through, that I'm able to kind of put something back into the universe for people to listen to and contemplate and, gain some kind of knowledge from.
Yeah, it works. All right. Well, unless you have anything else to add, how about you, Eugene?
Can you still hear me? My computer's acting weird.
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
You're good. Yeah, you're good.
So I remember my mom watching Star Trek. I remember seeing Star Trek on the TV when I was younger, and I always thought the original series, and I always thought it looked really like kind of cheesy. Like I was just a little kid. I didn't. Even back then, I was just like, oh, I don't know, this looks really, really silly. So I used to kind of almost run away from Star Trek. I just tried to avoid it. And then there were a couple moments where I almost watched Star Trek. I remember seeing a commercial for Relics, the Star Trek: The Next Generation episode with Scotty on. Right. I did not watch any Star Trek: The Next Generation. I had not seen like the original series or anything. But just seeing that commercial, it seemed like such a cool idea. For somebody who hadn't even seen any Star Trek before, it was like, that seems really cool, right? This older character from like the other series is like now on this new show. I want to watch that, but I didn't know when it was on, and I totally forgot about it, and so I missed it. So how I got into Star Trek in the 7th grade, I was in I took Latin in 7th grade in my school, and my Latin teacher, Mr. Alexander, who unfortunately I recently discovered has just passed away.
No, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we haven't been in touch for a very long time, but he was kind of a formative person for me, as you'll hear, because he was really a huge Trekkie. He had all those Columbia House tapes, the ones you had to buy. They would send you like a tape in the mail for like $30 or $40 every month, and it would have like 2 episodes of the original series on there. He had the whole collection of them all of them, right?
Jeez.
And he had seen like all the movies, but when my friend and I were talking to him, he had not seen Star Trek 6 yet, The Undiscovered Country, and it was just coming on cable at that time. It was on HBO, and I had HBO. I'll admit, like we stole cable like many people did back in the day, because we certainly couldn't afford it. But
Yes.
I offered to tape it for him, right? So I recorded the movie for him. I was like, I may as well watch this. Like I've never seen Star Trek, but it'd be cool to have something to talk about with him, let him know, So as I'm recording it on HBO for him, to this thing called a VHS tape, I watched it, and I was sucked into it. I didn't know who the characters were. I couldn't really remember the names, like the relationships, like, but and it's a weird entry point into the series, I think, especially for like a 13-year-old, like 14-year-old kid to watch this movie that's about like, age and your legacy and, the world moving on without you, all that stuff. But all of those themes still somehow, it's a fantastic film, and it all carried over to me. And I was suddenly like really interested in Star Trek. And that was just before Star Trek Deep Space Nine was debuting. So they had WPIX, the local Channel 11 station, was running Star Trek marathons of the original series leading up to that. So I got to binge watch a lot of the original series that way. And from that point on, I started watching Star Trek: The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. That was the first Trek I watched from episode 1, from the debut all the way through to the end. I got sucked in. I borrowed tapes from my teacher, and I dubbed all of his tapes over, so I had a complete set of the original series. We had another teacher at our school who had been recording Star Trek: The Next Generation off of like the Long Island feed. I guess they were syndicating it at that point, so it was on every day. He had a full set of episodes from that, so my friends and I copied all of his tapes. So I had access to the shows. It seems so. People who can just stream everything now, or even torrent everything now that they could possibly want to watch, that having that kind of access at that time was very, very special, because otherwise you were really just stuck to watching whatever happened to be broadcasting or whatever you could find from your library or whatever. So I fell for it hard. I got really into it. I started reading all the original series, like all the tie-in novels that I could get out of my library. It became my identity. It really became my identity for like the longest time. I was a very big Trekkie from that point on. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it.
Oh, okay. Hey, I see Snarb's joined us. So welcome aboard, Snarb.
Welcome.
And I actually knew somebody who was getting tapes like the ones you described, like the 2 episodes per, and they were getting them through the service there.
Mm-hmm.
Except it was Next Generation, not original series.
Right.
I'll get into that later, though. So, Mike, how'd you get into it?
I mean, I already kind of explained that.
All right, then your time's up. We'll move on to me.
That's cool. No, seriously, I don't have too much more to add, except I think that because I became an obsessive fan of you back in the early 2000s, that pushed me to get more into Trek, which I known existed, but I guess I didn't think much of it when I was younger, except that, like I said, my dad was a fan of it. I believe he had some sort of, like, novelty phone shaped like the Enterprise. I'll go rummaging the basement, see if we still have that or not. But yeah, I mean, what's up?
I remember something back on the old moon when you were still learning about Star Trek. I mentioned something about the Excelsior, and you're like, "Oh, what Stan Lee says?" Like, no, Mike, as in the USS Excelsior, NCC 2000, or damn it, Mike, watch the freaking movies.
That was probably why I became a Trek fan, because you more or less cajoled me into it. So, but I certainly don't regret it. It has been very fun to finally get into, and I mean, like, super get into in 2020, whereas before I had mostly just caught, like I said, I absorbed the first 2 and third or so of the original series, and all of the movies and various episodes of The Next Generation, which ran on BBC for a time of all networks, back when, I actually had TV. Now I don't really view cable because I guess it's semi-obsolete now, but oh well.
That's the way it is.
Yep. But, again, there's not much to it. I just really, really like the series. Even the bad episodes have some purpose. Like, I actually think Threshold had some merit. It was just executed very bizarrely.
Yeah, that goes for anything but space hippies.
No.
Way to Eden. Every time I watch that, I'm like, okay, never again. Never again.
Yes.
And I watch it again the next time. I was like, why did I do that? Like, because you forget. You think, oh, maybe it's not as bad. No, it is. It's as bad as you remember it. Stop. Do not watch it.
Yeah, but weirdly, it has gained relevance because your character in that, Dr. Severin, he's like the prototypical anti-vaxxer.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ. You have a point there, unfortunate as it is.
Mm-hmm. It's also kind of funny seeing Charles Napier as like the opposite of every other character he ever played in anything.
Yeah, it's that's a long way up the pipe from Duke Phillips. So
Not to mention the general on DS9 in Little Green Men.
Yeah, I like how they got to redeem Charles Napier in a role that's much more befitting for him on one of our favorite DS9 episodes, no less.
Yep. And I also wanted to say that my sister just popped in briefly to say that she's not staying because she's not really into Trek. But Kate's
Alas.
here. So, hi,
Hey,
Kate.
Kate. What's up?
I don't know how you couldn't drag her in, Dyer.
You have no idea how hard it was to even get her to watch a Star Wars movie. But I succeeded in that, at least. Anyway. Well, in my case, I was a diehard Star Wars fan back in the 80s. Because,
I'm seeing a pattern here.
I was 5 when Empire Strikes Back came out. It was the first movie I ever saw in theaters, and it just gripped my imagination, wouldn't let go. And then somewhere along the line, I got introduced to Indiana Jones, and that just became even bigger. And then somewhere in that time period, happened to be flipping the channels on the TV one day and came across Star Trek. And thinking back on it, I think it was from the Ultimate Computer. But I just remember watching for a little bit and going, I'm bored. I'm really bored. And I changed the station.
Too cerebral for you?
I think it was just over my head completely. I was still basically a little kid, so when I got into junior high, on the other hand, that's when I rediscovered it, started watching it, and actually I started watching any chance I could get, whatever cable station or UHF station or whatever was carrying it. We didn't actually have cable. My parents refused to get it. But, so I just catch it and watch it, and then I kind of fell out of it for a while because we moved, and by then I do have one distinct memory though. There was 2 brothers who were friends of mine named Josh and Charlie. They moved away shortly after this happened. I have no idea what happened to them. I can't even find them online. But I was over at their house. We were playing Atari. I specifically remember we were playing Phoenix at the time, and one of them came in and was like, yeah, we got to stop playing in about an hour. There's a new Star Trek show coming on. My parents want to watch it. And that turned out to be the premiere episode of Next Gen. But I didn't. I went home. I didn't watch it. And about 3 seasons in, I finally caught my first episode. It was I think it was Ship in a Bottle. And
Nice.
Okay.
I just remember Picard and Worf, and I think Data too beamed over to the Promalian battle cruiser, was it? And seeing all those like long dead aliens on there, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And I started watching it on and off after that, and I got into the movies right around the same time, and it just kind of snowballed from there. Especially when my friend Andre turned out to be a huge Trek fan too, along with his dad. That was the guy who was getting the Next Generation tapes in the mail. Voyager was the first series I was on board with from episode 1, though, because I missed the first couple seasons of DS9. And it's been pretty steady ever since. So that's my Star Trek origin story in a nutshell. So that being said, how about your favorite series out of the bunch? Earl?
I've never been to Star Trek I didn't like, but I have got to go with Next Generation because it's got that, especially like seasons 2 and 3, because you are in that sweet spot where you're getting out of the weirdness of season 1. Which my advice to anyone watching season 1 of Next Gen is to treat every episode as if it's in an alternate timeline.
Yeah, basically.
That's not a bad way of putting it. Yet if anyone else I know gets into TNG, I'll give them that caveat.
There's at least been one episode where the entire first season was in an alternate timeline and everything that followed. So there's actually been several episodes where it was all an alternate timeline.
Yeah, because you've got weird stuff like they're just trying on the different things that the show could be until they find the combination of what the show will be.
You mean
And-
like how
Yep.
Jonathan Frakes tried on a beard, and that was how everything was great for then on and after and onwards?
Well, I think really what coincided with that was they finally got some new writers in. Gene's involvement was less, which means that Gene's lawyer's involvement was less, which
Oh,
That
he
guy.
chose to
fucker.
involve himself with the script revision process, although he was not in the Writers Guild or a writer or whatever. He's just got his clients back in whatever form he needs, which I guess means creative writing. Weirdly, not the first lawyer involved with Star Trek, because if you remember the original series, and the children shall lead.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
I cracked up when that was referenced in Zodiac, of all movies. Like, Brian Cox referencing his character's role on Star Trek was not something I ever would have put on a bingo card, but I was amused and bemused by that.
That's
Yeah.
actually one of two things I like to troll Mike with from time to time. I'll throw him a picture of Melvin Belly or what's his name there?
Joe fucking goddamn Piscopo. you
Don't
bastard.
mind Mike. He works blue. Yes, I always give him that picture of Joe giving the thumbs up.
Just because he was in one bad season 2 episode doesn't mean he has any relevance to Star Trek.
It's funny watching your
I mean,
reaction.
beyond like
though.
a minute.
Anyway,
Jesus Christ.
that aside, Earl, go on.
Now I forget where I was. I was
Sorry, my
Joe
bad.
Piscopo. But yeah, you had they kind of very gently kind of pushed Gene further out of the process. Also, his health was having that effect as well. So it wasn't like they pushed him off to the beach. As all the Atari programmers used to say, "Oh, we're being retired to the beach."
Yeah.
He wasn't sent to the beach. He had health issues that were kind of impinging on the amount of time and energy he had to give it. And then other people kind of walked in. I love season 2 because I am Team Pulaski. I am always going to be Team Pulaski.
Ooh.
I
You
was
know,
almost disappointed when Crusher came back. I don't object to Crusher coming back. I just wish we had gotten more time with Pulaski, like another season or something, and a proper handoff instead of, oh, she's gone.
Yeah,
Happened off screen. She fell down the elevator.
they could have. they could have spent time that they wasted on Shades of Grey and done a proper handoff episode.
yeah, alas. I mean, yeah, I actually like Dr. Pulaski. I think that the fan base really exaggerates her like racism against androids. She was a jerk to Data in one episode. One. That's
She's
not
a
her
jerk.
defining characteristic.
She's a jerk to Data in the beginning, and then by the end of it, she's his biggest fan.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
they've got the guy coming in playing, it looks like a 3D version of Kicks, the old arcade game. It's projected on a table, and she's like, oh, I know just the guy to tear this guy down, and it's Data, my pal Data. And so it's like, she actually has it's the first story arc in Star Trek, in TV Star Trek, really, is that she comes around to being, Data's backer.
That's a good
Whereas
point,
at first
yeah.
she was like, okay, he's talky toaster. Howdy doodly doo.
Yeah, pretty much.
Sorry, that's Red Dwarf.
Yeah,
I am up for talking Red Dwarf. I don't think Dyer's seen any of that.
I haven't. So
Alas.
yeah, I don't know what it is. There's a lot of classic sci-fi series out there I just have never seen, like Red Dwarf, Babylon 5,
What?
Battlestar Galactica, the new one, which is now old or something. What can I say?
Yeah, the new Battlestar Galactica is now over 20 years old, and
Oh, God.
those are my bones crumbling to ancient dust that you hear.
Yes. Uh-oh. Betty is
Yeah.
questioning me now. Yes, dear.
Just when you think you know somebody.
I'm sorry. I guess I never told you this, but it's true.
Living a lie.
I've never seen
Not a lie, an omission.
I've never seen Red Dwarf or Babylon 5 or Farscape or Stargate the series or
What have you been doing?
I've been playing video games.
I haven't seen most of these either, to be fair. I think Red Dwarf is like the
I haven't
only
seen
other.
all of those things, but I've seen like the ones that I really liked. I finally watched like all of B5. Like, I haven't seen all of Stargate and Farscape and all that, but I've at least seen enough of them to have a good sense of like what it is. You should at least watch like the first couple of episodes of each of those shows. I would think.
Yeah, no, I really should someday.
But I will say I've seen many episodes of Doctor Who.
That's one I need to get more on too. I saw a fair chunk of the third Doctor, John Pertwee, somehow though. But other than that, I need to do some serious boning, as Principal Skinner would say. So
Yeah, the great thing about, and this is like a shift that has happened in our lifetimes, is that you used to be doing good to get one sci-fi show on the air
Yes.
in a season, and it would be like Man from Atlantis, and it would be on for 12 weeks, and it's like, well, that's gone, but it was cool while we had it.
You will watch Space Precinct at 2 a.m. on Saturday nights, and you will like it because it is the only science fiction on television right now.
Pretty much.
Space Precinct was in a crowded field, but I'm always a big fan of like in the 60s you at least had kind of the push from the space program. And once you get to 1970, it's like, oh, the moon, we did that already, and now we're going to massively cut NASA's budget. Thank you for playing. And so in the 70s you have less of a push for sci-fi on the air, and it turns into, weird one-offs like Logan's Run or The Star Lost, or, if you're in the UK, stuff like Moonbase 3. And it's all so much of a time and a place. I still think any TV, but also especially sci-fi, because you cannot outrun the march of technology. You can tell when it was made. And the show is not really about the future. It is about when it was made. No matter what it is. It doesn't have to be Star Trek.
What about Space 1999? It's another one I've never seen.
That one is weird and metaphysical, which definitely fits in with like 1975. It's a great show to look at. Sometimes trying to fathom what kind of story they're trying to tell is it's a bit of a head job, because they get trippy with it, and I think they expected everyone else to be doing the same drugs they were, and me coming to it later as a kid, I'm just like, I don't know what this is about, but man, the sets are cool and the ships are really cool. Which sums up Space 1999 for a lot of people.
I've always wanted to see more of Blake's Seven, but it was never really convenient to get it. I don't even know if it's still even available unless you have like a streaming.
Lucky you, they have just started putting the seasons out on Blu-ray with the option to watch it with newer effects.
Oh, that's interesting.
So
and it's available in both the UK and the US, which is the first time it's ever gotten American home video release.
Okay, thank you.
Now is a great time to get it. I love Blake 7. It is one of my absolute all-time favorites, and I highly recommend it. It's kind of the opposite of Star Trek. It's very dreary, and hope is not a big feature on the landscape. I'll put it that way.
Fair.
like Snarb said here, he needs to watch V and Alien Nation. Now those at least I've seen episodes of.
V, I mean, I remember watching V like live, as a kid.
Me too.
I'm sure a lot of it went over my head, but that's an incredible show, especially now. I think pretty interesting watching, I'm sure. And Alien Nation, I think I only ever really watched. There were like 4 TV movies of Alien Nation. I think I saw those, but I didn't really watch the series.
Yeah, I watched.
The interesting thing is
episodes.
Alien Nation and V were created by the same guy, Kenneth Johnson.
That is
Oh,
interesting.
cool.
Huh. Well, I know.
Sorry, I'm full of useless trivia like this that comes out at absolutely the most inconvenient time.
We're all full useless trivia of some sort.
It's what
Oh,
they pay me
yes.
for.
Yep.
I know when it came to like other sci-fi stuff, Quantum Leap was a big thing of mine. And
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for time travel anyway, so that and does Knight Rider count as science fiction?
I think so.
Yeah, because that car is still cooler than any self-driving car we have now.
Damn right.
It was clearly built with Cylon technology.
Yeah. Right with little
sliders.
But yes, Sliders. I loved that show. And
The
it's
first season of Sliders before they kicked the creator of the show off.
Yeah.
Because after that, it kind of became this thing where it was like, oh, we're going to hump the leg of whatever's hot in the movies right now. So, hey, we're going to suddenly have a dinosaur episode because Jurassic Park is only 3 years old at this point. Or they did a Twister episode, and it's like, oh, come on, I see what you're doing.
that first season was so great.
Sliders didn't exactly disappear. It kind of kept on going longer than you thought it did. There were like 5 seasons of Sliders. And like eventually Jerry O'Connell wasn't even on it anymore. And they made another character who was like an amalgamation of him and one of his parallel selves or his brother or something. It's very strange, but I'm very much like Dyer. I'm really into time travel. I'm really into parallel universes, which if anybody reads my first novel, they will not be shocked. Did you, since we were talking about older TV though, did you ever see Time Tunnel?
Yes.
I have not, but I've heard all about it.
It's like the 60s version of Quantum Leap, basically.
Yeah, but one of the co-stars is Vic Fontaine, young Vic Fontaine.
Yes,
Jimmy
that's
Darren,
right.
really?
That's
Cool.
right.
The late great Jimmy Darren.
Old Vic Fontaine. I seem to remember a lot of controversy about him showing up on DS9.
What was not to love? I don't remember this.
Some people didn't. Yes. I think that it seems strange to people in the moment that so much of the focus shifted to Vic, right? Like he became like a really like core part of the series at that point, which was really interesting. Even right down to like the finale, pretty much. But he's such a nice guy. How could you not like Vic Fontaine?
Exactly.
Yeah, one of my absolute favorite episodes of that show is like we're gonna ditch everyone else in the cast and just do Vic and Nog.
It's Paper Moon. Yes, that's one of my favorites.
Yes,
too.
that was a good one.
Boom. Like that episode alone makes me have absolutely like no complaints for Vic being what he is. I guess I can understand if some people are irritated with the whole like Rat Pack 50s ass lounge thing, and if anyone else is sick of Seth MacFarlane shit, then I can understand why. But no, Vic's legit. I really if there were any problems in the later seasons of DS9, he was among the least of them.
I don't think he was as divisive as like Esri, right?
Esri? Oh, Dax, right. Sorry, brain fart.
Yeah, I think
Esri. To not remember Esri.
I like both of those elements of the show better than the constant return to the mirror universe, which DS9 did. I think they did it like 6 times, and it was 6 times too many because they did not understand what the original episode was about. The original episode was about something more than, we're going to put everyone in funny beards and costumes and let them act outrageous. Oh my.
Yeah, that was not a thing to make a once a season recurring matter. That was a mistake. I agree.
Exactly.
The thing I always found really interesting about Deep Space Nine is Star Trek: The Next Generation. Aside from a couple of, it started to lean into it a little bit more, but initially it felt like it was trying real hard to separate itself from the original series. Like they would have occasional guest appearances, and those were some of the stunts. Like, oh, let's bring on Leonard Nimoy or have McCoy in the pilot, all that stuff. But for the most part, they didn't really talk that much about Star Trek, like the original characters, until Star Trek Generations or whatever. But Deep Space Nine was really surprising when it started to like really lean into the original series. like that mirror universe, and they were talking about like James Kirk. I was like, I think is this the first time they've actually mentioned James Kirk on like one of these shows? Like,
Yeah.
and then they had like the trials and tribulations is just an amazing like love letter to the original series.
That was
That's
crazy.
great.
So that was there is really interesting to see like the show that was that was the most different from the original series was the one that seemed to embrace it like the most.
But now that you mention it, I think they referenced Kirk exactly once on Next Generation, and that's when they brought Scotty out of the transporter.
Naked. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they mentioned it in the Naked Now.
Oh,
right?
they might have mentioned that too.
Kirk's ship. They mentioned it. I think at one point they were like on the original Enterprise or something, and then yeah.
I forgot about that episode, and probably with good reason.
Data is fully functional, Dyer.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah.
That's one thing we found about that.
I'm not sure. Go ahead.
One thing we found about Tasha Yar is that she prefers her men android.
There was a porn
given her history,
that kind of ran off of that premise, actually.
Right, but given her history, do you blame her?
No. Anyway, anything else to add about TNG, Earl?
Just that I can go back to it anytime. I can just pick a random episode, and it's just like, for the most part, good memories, because whatever crap I was going through at the time, Next Gen was always able to kind of pick me out of it and also make me look forward to the next one, which, again, as weird as it sounds, it has a lot to do with why I'm still here to talk about it.
Well,
especially when there was a cliffhanger for the summer.
Yeah, now that was torturous, but
Mr.
but
Worf
more on that later.
Well, we're glad you're still here.
Yeah, totally, man.
So, yes, Mike.
I'm wondering if we should just like go down the series each by per, but we should ask first what Eugene's favorite series is, because I'll spoil this. Rob and mine's is also TNG, so.
Well, I'll say so. Mine is also TNG, but
Hooray!
I have to admit that partially it's like I think that I mean, obviously I love the original series, but Star Trek: The Next Generation, I don't know, it's just the perfect combination of the thoughtful stories and the action and like the really interesting ensemble cast and all of that. But I will say that I don't know that it is necessarily the best, and I'm not even sure that it's the one that holds up the best. On my last rewatch of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, I was very much more impressed with that series on the whole, as as something that I think, ultimately was just a kind of really, really, I think that was like probably better on the whole than the Next Generation was. And then I'll also say there's too little of it to say yet, but Strange New Worlds is kind of creeping up on being one of my favorite stories.
That's a good.
It's good. It's very good. Yes.
I will say one thing about TNG. I remember when it first came out, or at least when I first started watching, it's like, wow, this looks so futuristic. This is like, miles better than anything they've gotten. I thought this show is never going to look old. It looks old now. But Mike,
I've never actually watched the remastered versions. I don't really I don't care that much for like upgrading the visuals to make it look better, but presumably that improves it in some ways for people who think that it looks dated.
Well, it's not so much the fact that visuals look dated around like that. It's just kind of the like the general look of everything, even aboard ship. But the remastered versions, I think,
lens flares.
Let's not bring lens flares into this yet.
God damn it!
I will say though that the effects work they did do on it, they basically keep it as accurate to the original show as possible. So it's like the same thing they did with the remastered original series. And Mike, this may surprise you, but I've actually had to flip a coin many times in my mind to decide whether I like the original series or Next Generation the best? And currently that coin's kind of standing up and spinning around.
No, that is very believable. I mean, I don't know if you just wanted to hit each series blow by blow and explain what you like and what you don't like about them, or if we want our structure. I mean, like, we will. I guess we won't strictly stay in that tunnel. We'll bounce over.
We'll be here a long time.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, I'm not exactly sure how to tackle what I would say about every Star Trek, but yeah, I will. Yeah, if we are starting on TOS to say, I should say for a show that holds up in the old gee whiz Ward Cleaver dominated ass 1960s, it was surprisingly progressive. Even if there are absolutely some factors that don't hold up so well today, but it's still a very watchable show on the whole. Well, at least the episodes that are good to great. There are, of course, some stinkers in there. But,
how did Fry put it exactly? 79 episodes, about 30 good ones.
Yeah, what they said on that fantastic episode of Futurama.
Where no fan has gone before.
It's a good one, Davey.
Long have I waited for
that. I forgot about that. That was so good.
Long have I waited for the one who played Spock, and now we can begin. Cool. Star Trek convention. I love that episode.
It's so good, yeah.
So then I boarded you, eh? And what happened after that? You started this stupid court-martial. Now we're still in the middle of fighting Melvar.
It's spelled with 3 L's.
I've done enough conventions to know how to spell Melvar. That whole show is just so quotable.
Yep.
More so than any other Futurama episode, I think. And the fact
Probably, yeah.
The fact that they got nearly every surviving original series main cast member to participate, except for James Doohan, who basically said no way.
That's his right. No worries.
They replaced him with Welshie.
I did like the whole thing with Welshie. It might have been a little mean, but I found it very funny at the same time.
Well, later on in the same episode, Shatner was like, wasn't there an episode where I threw my shoe at an enemy? You mean Doohan?
Yep.
And then him and Nimoy high five. But yeah,
Dang.
Such a great episode. But yeah, I was thinking we would go from best or most favorite to least favorite out of the bunch.
You mean episode-wise?
No, series-wise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's fair.
So, Earl, what would be your least favorite Star Trek series? If you really had to think about it.
Probably have a least favorite series. There's stuff I love about all of them. I mean, even when TOS is absolutely crazy, like dude impersonating Abraham Lincoln, "Help me, Kirk." It's memorable. I mean, we remember that stuff.
Space
And
Lincoln.
it just kind of it lives forever. Even the animated series. There's stuff I love about the animated series, and
I do too. Yeah, when I got around the animated series, I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. I thought it. I liked it more than I did season 3 of the show proper. Although when you put it that way, while season 3 of TOS has problems out the wazoo, you are right. It is almost never boring, if nothing else.
And you know what else?
I couldn't believe it. Go ahead.
I'll say, you know what else season 3 of TOS has? Tholians.
Tholians, yep. Your favo that no one else loves as much.
So Dyer.
Yes.
This is a side tangent from what I was going to say. The episode. So the spec script that I wrote for Star Trek 269 was called Tear of the Prophet. And the plot of this was that the Cardassians had manufactured an artificial Bajoran orb that they were going to use to basically mess with the Bajorans. And it opens with an attack by the Tholians. And so they had my spec script for I want to say 7 or 9 months, which seemed strange because I actually knew somebody else, like one of my friends also sent in a spec script at the same time, and his came back like almost right away. So I don't know if they were holding on to it or if it just got lost somewhere or whatever. There actually is an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine called Tears of the Prophets.
Yeah.
And I thought it might be a coincidence, but shortly after I sent in my spec script, they started talking about the Tholians again on Deep Space Nine. Like, we never saw them, but they did occasionally name drop them again. It was like, oh, it's like they suddenly remembered
Tholian
there were
Silk.
Tholians. Yeah. But anyway, but yeah, I've always been into, you know, a fan of the Tholians, so I had to work them in there.
And that, just as an aside, is my biggest problem with the franchise as a whole. Completely, practically ignoring the Tholians.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are so damn cool, and I want to see more of them. So it's like, okay, we get a few mentions here and there. Of course, you know, Tholian Web in the original series, and then In a Mirror Darkly on Enterprise. And that is the most we've gotten out of the Tholians, and it makes me sad.
That might be the case where if they were around more, they might not be as cool, but...
Borg!
yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah.
Especially if they introduce a Tholian queen.
I never expected the Packlets to become such a dominating series. Species on this series.
That was hilarious.
That was amazing, actually. That total redemption of one of the stupidest fucking TNG episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but look at us now. We live in a Pack-led stocracy.
Pretty much. Yeah, it was a little idiocracy-esque predictive, but I don't want to dwell on that.
I don't have a big enough hat to go ahead and talk about that.
Yep. Anyway, sorry, Earl, you're talking about your least favorite series. We kind of side-railed all that.
I do have a least favorite movie.
Okay.
And that is Star Trek Into Darkness.
Thank you!
Yes.
Fuck that movie!
Yes!
It's bullshit! It is the closest I have come to actually walking out on a goddamn movie that I was actually in the theater seeing. Now, I don't do that because I want to get my money's worth, but when Zachary Quinto shouted Khan, I almost just like...
Oh, no, I laughed. And that's not the emotion they want you to have at that moment.
No.
That's fair.
I laughed bitterly. Because here's the thing. I love the 2009 movie. You know, the first one.
Yeah, it was great.
It's much better than it has any right to be, yes.
And the third one's pretty good, too.
I love Star Trek Beyond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Beyond's real damn good, too. I agree.
And the thing that the 2009 movie did that was so amazing that I didn't expect it to actually get lift under its wings and do this was it keeps the characters intact, but it's like, okay, we're wiping this slate of all the lore, and we can do something new. Right? It was amazing that they did that and left the original universe intact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then what's the first thing they do with this newfound freedom? Oh, we're going to do Khan again.
Yeah,
except we're going to call him John Harrison. Everyone will be completely fooled.
I think it would have not been as bad if they hadn't tried to lie, right, so blatantly about it.
Yeah.
But that's another good point, yeah. And then they did, offhand, they did the exact same thing with fucking James Bond and Spectre and Blofeld and all that.
What I think they should have done with the second movie is I thought it would have been really cool if they had done the cage with Kirk.
That would have been
interesting.
It would have been nice, and
which they did, like Strange New Worlds, kind of did something in that vein when they swapped and had Pike in Balance of Terror, like that.
Yeah,
because that's the idea. Like, how do different captains handle this situation differently, as opposed to how does this captain handle the situation differently, like earlier than he was supposed to deal with it? Like,
mm-hmm. Yeah, the season 1 finale of Strange New Worlds feels much more like what Into Darkness should have been, and it helps that it was handled by competent people and not a director who I tried my longest to hold off calling him because I didn't see what all the hubbub was about until the Rise of Skywalker made me think, okay, I think J.J. Abrams might be a hack. So
His damn mystery box. But, I wanted to throw in Earl. You have echoed exactly what I've said about Into Darkness. Like, they are an entirely new universe with new stuff to play with, and they give us con.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's funny. There's
my favorite thing about Into Darkness was the poster, which I then photoshopped what's his face, Cunnilingus Bandersnatch out of.
Oh.
And
Let's just call him
my friend
Doctor-
just calls him Cumby.
Let's just call him Doctor Strange.
yeah, and
That's fair.
I put in Dr. Jack from Torchwood and called it Star Trek Into Harkness. Whatever the hell that was, it would have been a better movie.
Well, it's funny.
Nice.
Mike and I have a mutual friend who thought Into Darkness was great because reasons.
Cut them from your life.
No, he's a good guy.
Everything is someone's favorite.
Yeah.
And this is one thing I have found out, doing the podcasting thing, is every episode is somebody's favorite. Every episode really landed with somebody.
I was really shocked that Into Darkness revived Section 31. I wasn't expecting that.
Oh my God, I forgot.
Which is
it
not a
did
thing that needed to happen. Because
Jesus
No,
Christ.
Section 31
God damn it.
better left
Buried.
left buried.
I liked Section 31 on DS9 when it was just the one guy.
Yes.
And you had no proof that there was an organization behind him. And it's like, okay, well, it's maybe just this one batshit crazy dude.
Yeah.
It should have began and ended with William Sadler. That's
Yes.
with death from Bill and
Ted.
Ted's Bogus Journey.
Yeah.
So
But, in defense of our mutual friend, as he puts it, he's just a tourist in Star Trek. His thing is more Doctor Who.
And that's fine. And then he should really find Into Darkness offensive because, Mickey Smith, how very dare you?
who's Mickey Smith? Sorry.
Noel Clark, the guy who blows up the building, that starts the whole plot rolling.
Oh, yeah.
He's
Oh.
Mickey Smith in Doctor Who.
Oh, I didn't realize that Cumby was actually in Doctor Who. Sorry. My Who knowledge is severely lacking. I'm so sorry.
I don't think that's the same guy, Mike.
No.
I'm very confused right now.
Yeah, we're talking about the guy whose daughter is in the hospital at the beginning. And it's like someone has compromised him and he's doing Khan's bidding or
Totally
Admiral.
forgot that was a character. That's how much of a shit I don't give about that movie. Sorry.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do a website where I do a write-up on every story that the franchise has ever cranked out, and so I am burdened with terrible knowledge.
Yeah.
And just to throw out the site address there for anyone who's interested in checking it out, because there's more than just the write-ups there. There's also cool stuff like phosphor.fossils.
Yeah, and that would be thelogbook.com. Not a logbook, not just any logbook, but the logbook.
Mm-hmm.
You bet.
I strongly advise checking it out if you get a chance.
Mm-hmm. I will.
You should.
I can.
All right. So, Eugene, what would you say is your least favorite Star Trek series and or movie?
Well, so since I've already said I haven't finished watching Enterprise, it has to be Enterprise. But I will admit, on the from the ones that I have seen all the way through, the one that I enjoy the least of those is Star Trek Voyager. But I think, in retrospect, because I think I'd like to rewatch Voyager, from a much older perspective and with different expectations of it, because I suspect it's better than I thought it was at the time. But for a while there, I actually stopped watching Voyager, and I lasted maybe 2 or 3 episodes before the FOMO got me. I was like, no, I need to stick with it. But yeah, it was kind of rough. It was kind of rough. Voyager was always frustrating because they would have a really cool idea and then somehow screw it up. They have a really great science fiction premise, and then somehow I just didn't like the way that how the characters handled or addressed it. Voyager, I've always said, has 7 great episodes in it out of 7 seasons. and most of those were the EMH episodes.
Yeah, well, the
Me,
Doctor is one of the
personally.
best characters. So
He is the
Yeah.
absolute best one. I'm not going to argue with that.
Well, that's kind of how they got into those questions of like identity and humanity, and he was like the Data of Voyager. Those episodes I found the most interesting. And then it's just they leaned so much into it was one of those things where the same thing happened with Battlestar Galactica, because it just seemed like it had so much cool potential. Voyager, they're out in the middle of the Delta Quadrant, and I remember the first episode they were like, oh, we have like however many number of quantum torpedoes, however many photon torpedoes, whatever. And I was like, I'm gonna count, right? Like one of those things where it's just like it would be really cool if they were consistent with that. And same thing with Battlestar Galactica, because then they found ways to like refuel and find new resources and things like that. They had a really cool idea that ended up being like a really bad idea with like the sort of the biological hybrid ship. Like, I don't know. It just had lots of cool ideas. They just threw a lot of things at the wall, and not everything stuck, And I don't know. It's just there's stuff that's like it's kind of cool. They had like the holographic pool house that they kept running. They had the movie nights. Like I liked the movie nights. There was a lot of stuff that just never really worked out. It's like, okay, you've got this ship of Starfleet and Maquis, and they're gonna clash, and it's gonna be really tough. It was like, no, now everyone's Starfleet, and they're gonna sometimes argue, but that's about it. Like
I will give you that, Eugene. That was absolutely a whiff that pretty damn too soon into Voyager's run that both factions became too buddy too soon. And I feel that the first two seasons would have paid off so much more if the Starfleet Maquis conflict was the major focus, and that made their that made their relations more believable and engaging. And they had to waste it on the fucking discount Klingons instead. God
yes,
the Kazon.
They spent about a season and a half too long in Kazon space. They should have been out of there halfway through the first season.
Yeah,
they had
the
cool
whole thing.
aliens. They had those what were they called, like the phages or whatever? Like they would eat.
Was it the Vidians? Yeah.
Is that what their name? Yeah.
Yeah, but
I don't know. It had just lots of cool ideas that just, ultimately I felt like you said, I feel like they whiffed it, all the time.
Yeah.
Big problem with both Voyager and Enterprise was that they were on a network. Paramount had started a network. It started UPN. I was working at a UPN station when all this started, and so I've got a little bit of inside baseball there. But a lot of stuff has come out since, such as the fact that Paramount thought, Star Trek is supposed to be harmonious, and so, let's settle this Maquis thing, like, between the pilot and episode 2, and no one ever sees what the resolution is.
I see.
And, and they did, and there were several successive management regimes at UPN, because it was a revolving door. And by the time you get to Enterprise, you had network execs saying, okay, could we work this out so that there is an opportunity for boy bands to make guest starring appearances each week and do a song on the ship?
Oh my God, that's awful.
that would have.
And so for people who
Or The Rock, let's bring The Rock on.
Yeah,
and that did happen. That did fucking happen, right?
That was a thing. Yeah, it was a crossover with WWF SmackDown. And so there were, because it was on a network and not in syndication, I mean, at the same time, Deep Space Nine was on, getting to do pretty much whatever, because everyone's attention was on the network show.
Yeah. And Earl, in my case, at least for the first season, it was literally on at the same time. Like Monday nights, I think, at whenever Voyager was on. Deep Space Nine was also on my local syndicated network, and so you had to choose which one you're going to watch, or tape one and watch the other one, or you'd have the reruns like later on that they would later in the week. But that was such a weird situation. It was like, how how are these two Star Trek shows like counter-programmed against each other right now?
It doesn't make any
Well,
sense.
because the network was seeking out, I think the network gave first refusal to indie stations that were not network affiliated. Like in my market, Next Gen and DS9 have been carried by the ABC station. Well, they wound up, the UPN station wound up with us, our brand new little indie station that we had just spun off of the Fox station. And so they wanted someone who could devote, primetime airtime and not shove it off into 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning like it was another syndication package. Which, to be fair, there had been a lot of attempts to launch syndication packages as things that would become networks, such as the Universal Action Pack, which was where you had Hercules and Xena and Tech War and Vanishing Sun.
I forgot Tech War was a series.
I fucking forgot that too. I mean, I know it was in addition to being a book series, I know there was a video game based on it. I fucking beat that game twice for reasons even I'll never understand.
Boredom.
You were imbued with the power of Shatner.
Yeah, I guess I was beguiled by his berating me every time I beat a mission, even though I don't know how I was supposed to do that without killing more people than I should have. But
Classic
oh well.
Shatner.
Yep.
Yeah.
He just break him like, get a life.
Yeah.
Stop playing this game. Get a life.
I wish he did. That would have been pretty hilarious. A great way to end the game, but
Also,
alas, not quite.
Just want to say hello to Logan. He just popped in.
You just
Hey,
saw
Logan.
the Howard the Duck movie,
Yes, Howard the Duck.
which I actually kind of enjoyed, but I haven't seen it in a long time.
It does have somewhat scantily dressed Leia Thompson, so it's not a total bust, but yeah, I gather that movie is terrible. I still haven't gotten to it myself, but maybe if I need shits and or giggles, I'll consider it.
I may not have ever actually seen the full movie, now that I think about it. I think I may have only seen it on television where they probably edited stuff out.
I'm so old I paid to see it in the theater.
Wow.
Whoa. Holy shit.
And
Did you want your money back?
Boy, did you pay.
Of course, it cost a lot less back then, but I was just like, okay, well, that was a movie. I mean, to put it in context, I also once won a radio contest for like a midnight movie marathon, and the movies were Ghostbusters 2, Star Trek 5, and UHF starring Weird Al.
Now that's a movie night.
Yeah, that's kind of amazing. One movie I like, even if it didn't have to be made. One movie that, if not great, I don't think is as bad as everyone says it is. And one sacrosanct classic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I actually took a date to that. I will spoil this. There was no second date.
I am so sorry to hear that.
And I will say that at that time when Howard the Duck came out, we didn't go to movies very often, so it had to be something like really special to go to.
If you can't handle me at my Ghostbusters 2, you don't deserve me at my UHF.
Damn Skippy.
Way of putting it, sir.
But the only thing I really remember about Howard the Duck these days, besides just glimpses of the movie, was, did anyone ever see George Lucas in Love?
Yes.
I haven't yet.
Well, at the very end, there's kind of a tag that happens where George's roommate comes in and he's like, "Hey, George, check out my new duck. I named him Howard." And you see Lucas's face just lights up. And he's like, "Hey."
The DJ at our wedding, his DJ name, I don't, stage name, I guess, is Howie D. And he got that from when he was jockeying at a radio station, and his nickname there was like Howard the Duck. So I technically had Howard the Duck DJ my wedding, and ironically, so we had a whole playlist of music that we wanted to be played during the reception, while people are eating and everything, and classics like the Shire theme from the Lord of the Rings, and there was the love theme from Superman the movie. One of the tracks that I don't think he actually played was a piano rendition of the Moon theme from the DuckTales video game, which you'd think Howard the Duck would totally be into.
Yeah.
I'll say the DJ at mine and Betty's wedding, he was actually a friend of ours, and we put together a custom playlist for him. And I remember the one song I specifically put on there that basically said, "Okay, it's over. Everyone leave." Was the Raiders March. You hear the Indiana Jones theme, time to get out.
That's funny. Now, did you tell people that, or did they just intuitively know that when they heard it playing? They were like, "Oh no, we're out."
Well, it's kind of funny because after the reception ended, it kind of turned into a video game swap meet, and then
that's
awesome.
Exactly. And then I said, "All right, go ahead and cue up the Raiders theme," and everyone's like, "Yeah, it's time to go." But
only you, Rob. Only you.
Only me. Well, and keep in mind, Betty allowed this.
That's why she's a keeper.
Mm-hmm. And also, when we, after we finished saying our vows, and we didn't do the traditional da 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 da, as we were leaving. No, Huey Lewis and the News, Power of Love.
Excellent.
That's the way to go.
Yes, as my best.
We did
man.
have Earth Angel in our playlist. We had Earth Angel from the Back to the Future.
Nice. As one of my groomsmen put it, that was the most personality-filled wedding he'd ever been to.
Nice.
So, but yeah. Anyway, to get back on track.
Yeah, to get back on track, yes.
Yeah. So, unless you... Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
So, unless you have anything else you want to add about Voyager, Eugene, let's move on to Mike.
I just wanted to add, because that whole thing just reminded me of Q, just saying the title, basically. Was it in All Good Things, where he's like, putting an end to your trek through the stars. It's
Yes.
like, oh, he did it. He did the thing.
or like Zephyr Cochrane in First Contact. So you're all astronauts on some kind of Star Trek.
Yeah.
All right, Mike. Least favorite series?
My answer, without thinking, is unoriginally Enterprise, but like there's a bit of a kayfabe I have that I just absolutely hate the series. It's total junk. I wish it was never a thing. That's not 100% true. I think there was some potential merit to be had with Enterprise. I mean, it had a decent setup, and there were a few good episodes every now and again. I actually really... I thought the one with the Klingon lawyer, which sounds like the setup for a bad joke, but actually gives a rather interesting and a somewhat tragic bit of Klingon lore. That was a good one. And there was also the one that, spoilers, set up the Borg, which even you liked, if I'm not mistaken, Rob.
You are correct.
I skipped ahead and watched the like I said, I stopped at the end of season 1, but I did watch the Mirror Universe episode, and overall I liked that, but I was really impressed with the way that it opened. That was really well done.
Yeah. So I do want to say Enterprise, it had some good things about it, and I don't think it was a complete waste of time for me to watch it. Just mostly a waste of time.
Mike, compared to what you originally thought of the series, I'd have to say for you, it's been a long time getting from there to here.
Okay, that song, a dick.
Good night, everybody.
Just, God. Fuck it. Okay, so the theme song is really stupid. That sort of like, Grammy ass, like Hallmark pop rock or whatever. I don't even know what the fuck you call it.
Wasn't it for Patch Adams?
Oh, was it? Oh, Jesus, that makes it even worse. But
however, if you guys have not seen this yet, you absolutely need to check this out. Yeah, do you guys ever watch the show Perfect Strangers?
Oh yeah,
sitcom Perfect Strangers.
I haven't, but I know the basic premise.
Show. Yeah. Anyway, the somebody did a music video, syncing up the title sequence from Star Trek Enterprise to the theme song from Perfect Strangers, and it is hilarious and it is perfect.
I have to see
that. Does
this
sound
now.
Kind of great, yeah. But yeah, I mean, the thing with Enterprise is that it's just blithely disappointing. I mean, this is something that Rob has also said quite a bit, but it had all this potential to get into like things that actually would have shaped the history of TOS,
Like the Earth
And,
Romulan War.
Yeah, exactly. Setting that up and, explaining where we are with the Klingons and whatnot in greater detail. And they chose to blow it on some stupid fucking temporal Cold War bullshit that we had never heard of before and barely heard of since.
But they also
Temporal
introduce all
Cold
sorts of weird,
War.
stupid nonsense like, oh, Vulcans can't stand the smell of humans.
Yeah.
Which then the
Hey,
series has
Ben.
been stuck with since that. It's like, well, then why did
Jesus.
Mary?
But yeah, that
my
temporal Cold War, that had to have been one of the most, like, what? Why aren't you
And
giving
I
us...
love time travel. I love time travel.
I know,
How
it's a
could you
crazy
lose me?
thing.
How could you lose me? Is there like, oh, we got Scott Bakula, we got to do some kind of crazy time travel thing, right? Like,
I
Oh,
mean,
boy.
kudos to having that one episode where Dean Stockwell guest starred, I suppose, but, like, I don't know. Like, Bakula was... I love the guy, but he was a poor fit for a Starfleet captain, as it turned out. Like,
he was a
It
poor
just-
fit for the character as he was written. I think he could have played a good Pike. I think he would have made a good Pike.
ooh,
I can
that's not a
say-
bad way of putting it. Yeah, yeah.
But the character that they made Archer, this like kind of stiff formal guy, like it didn't work out. And then you've just reminded me that I did also watch the finale of Enterprise, and whoa,
Oh, no.
what?
These are the voyages. Why did you do that, sir?
That happened. Well,
Yeah, it did.
The thinking behind that is that it was co-written by Rick Berman, who had been like co-executive producer all the way back to Encounter at Farpoint. And so he was trying to be clever and make it a finale to his 18 years with the franchise, except that no one really cares.
Yeah.
Rick, I mean, sorry, but now, did I ever tell you guys my temporal Cold War story?
I don't think
Go
so.
for it.
You might have,
I-
and then it was wiped out. But
It was
It was the Krenim. They did it.
It was changed into a fighting space Nazis or whatever. However, that ended with season 3 or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, if you're gonna do that, you've got to say it with like the Fargo accent and make it like space Nazis.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, he is space Nazis. But I was doing a panel at a convention once, and it was a Doctor Who panel. But I just decided to test the audience and throw in, okay, and by the way, the temporal Cold War from Enterprise is a small corner of the Great Time War from Doctor Who. People got up and left.
Now I remember this.
Oh shit! Wow.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean-
like, okay, if you left, well, then you needed to leave because you were not the people I wanted to stay.
Exactly. Oh, man.
I can understand why they'd be offended, but I'd be interested in at least hearing out your theory, if nothing else.
Well, I mean, it's especially if you've listened to any of the Doctor Who Big Finish audios, it's kind of the same thing. You know, the war is carried out by trying to erase historical events that were decisive early in the conflict, and so you change the whole shape of history. And it's like they're both doing that. So it's like, okay, well, same war. You know, it's screwing up all of reality and all possible realities. So there you go. It's the same war.
This,
That's fair.
you
Out of
just need,
curi-
Bob Newhart waking up like on a holodeck or something, and then
Which would have been better than These Are the Voyages, for the record.
absolutely.
It really would have. It really would
It's
have.
like, did you not notice that Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis have aged noticeably?
oh my god,
And to set them back in an episode of
charming
Next
that they
Generation?
tried, though. They tried so hard.
But you know what
It
this...
was all a dream. Porthos was looking at the snow globe.
Do you know what
Thinking of
this...
cheese.
You know what this reminds me of, though? Has
What's up?
anyone here besides Mike heard of a... it was a webcomic that ran for a little while. It was collected into a series of books. It was a parody series called Ensign Sue Must Die.
Oh
I've
yeah.
heard of it, but I haven't read it.
I've got all 3 books. It's hilarious. They spoof the whole Mary Sue thing. And it all takes place aboard the Kelvin Timeline Enterprise. And in the first book, it's kind of your base thing. Sue just kind of shows up and does all her magical, crazy Mary Sue stuff. And in the end, they trick her into getting eaten by a creature. But when the second book opens up, they're on the Enterprise, and that's when the 10th Doctor materializes in the transporter room. Lets them know that there's some crazy stuff going on. And they end up having this franchise jumping. They go through like the Marvel universe, the DC universe, Star Wars. They even freaking go into Twilight at one point, which is hilarious. It's only a one-panel gag, but still it's funny. But nice. What they're trying to collect all these Mary Sues, which are disrupting reality. And it all turns out it all started because of their one Mary Sue that they fed to the creature. So, and in the end, the Sues end up corrupting half the Enterprise crew, and they end up getting together with the remaining canon characters from all these different franchises that are still left, and they have this big war, and then, like, the great goddess Sue comes down, and turns out she's the original Mary Sue from back during TOS. And she was doing all this to impress Spock. In the end, they end up talking her down, and they all figure all the Sues vanish, and yeah, the last one, their original Mary Sue, she goes too, but she gets a good ending though. Nice. It's totally worth, if you get a chance, look it up. I'm sure it's still out there somewhere, but it's definitely worth the read. Especially with you expect the original Captain Kirk to show up. And he does, except that it's never actually him. Like at one point, it's T.J. Hooker.
Oh my God!
And then when Kelvin Universe Kirk is in need of advice, you see what looks like Admiral Kirk from the movies show up until all of a sudden he whips off the Starfleet uniform. He's got a suit and tie on, and he's like, "Hi, Denny Crane. I was on my way to a contest." Just remember one thing, Denny Crane. What?
He did say his name a lot on that show, from what I understand. I didn't really watch Boston Legal, but
it was great the way they did it, though.
That does sound pretty good, yeah.
Anyway, any other thoughts about Enterprise, Mike?
I mean, the only thing holding me back from really ripping into it is if I heard before the show
not
that,
to.
Yeah. I mean, I kept saying, and I will stick to this, that this won't just be me ripping the Enterprise for a straight hour. Earl, you actually said you like Enterprise to an extent, and that did give me pause from wanting to be really nasty to it.
My big beef with Enterprise is really the third season, which was this ill-considered, badly timed, tasteless response to 9/11.
Yep, you hit the trigger point there, Earl.
Was the worst fucking thing that has ever been made in any Trek. Maybe even worse than Into Darkness. I don't know. I'll have to think about that. But it's extremely fucking bad, and almost every episode ran together. I could not. Every time the Xindi came up, it's like my mind went like fucking Homer when Ned Flanders was talking about apple juice and cider.
You can save it. I'm leaving.
Exactly. It was just so dumb, and I didn't give a shit about any of this. It was just grimdark for the sake of grimdark. Leave that fucking 24 shit out of Trek. It's just not fitting to what the series, I feel. Well, if I say it's not something that the series should be, then I start sounding like one of those nerds. Trek can be many different things, but it should not have been that at the very fucking least.
Now,
I would not be surprised if we found out that it was the result of yet another UPN suit.
I'm not. Yeah, I wouldn't be either.
Yeah,
saying, "Oh, we need to. 24 is hot right now. We need to do Star Trek 24." And
Barf!
Yeah, and that's what we got, because you can almost skip over the third season, except there are actually a couple of episodes once we are finished dealing with the space Nazis in early season 4, there are actually a couple of good episodes that kind of deal with the fallout of season 3.
Yeah.
You really don't have to have seen season 3 to get it. It's just like, oh, hey, a thing happened, and these people are all now war veterans.
Yeah. It really speaking to the quality of the Zindi arc when you don't really need any context outside of what you're given in retrospect to understand what it all is. That's just how painfully, I'd say, generic the conflict was. This could have been against any assholes, like... I think maybe it would have been more engaging if it was, like, something with an established species. Maybe that's not really the Klingon way to do what they did, but, if it was a Klingon or a Romulan thing... In fact, it should have been the fucking Earth-Romulan War. That would have been $1 million idea. Instead, they give us a coalition of, like, all these species I've never even heard of before, like, I don't know, something that you'd see at SeaWorld was one of the species. I don't fucking know. I just, like, there were, like, 2 or 3 episodes in season 3 that I didn't think was terrible. The one where, like, there was a clone of Trip, I seem to remember, was actually pretty good. Similitude, I think it was called. So, like, even in when Trek was at its worst, I still found some good things to pluck out of it, but just what the fuck were they thinking with that whole Zindi bullshit at all? Were they even thinking at all? The question I wanted.
What they were trying to do with the coalition is, what if there is a Federation out there that's evil? And it's like, guys, Dominion, we just did that. Yeah. It's like they read about the Dominion War and said, what a cool idea. We should do that on Star Trek. You already did it on Star Trek, but because you have the network board demanding your full attention, they had no idea what had just happened on Deep Space Nine. Mm-hmm. And they actually, at one point, asked Ira Stephen Bear, who was the showrunner on, the back half of Deep Space Nine, who oversaw the whole Dominion War arc. They had him come in and offer advice, and apparently if I remember the exact quote from Brandon Braga, who was one of the Enterprise showrunners, he was like, he shit all over our show like you wouldn't believe, and he left.
That sounds like Bear, from what I know.
Yeah. The guy's got a
Dyer's favorite person in Trek history.
Yeah, he DGAF, he doesn't care what you think of him. He's out of there.
Yep. Now, I want to interject 2 things here. One,
go for it.
Mike, I thought you were about to literally blow a gasket there when you started talking about season 3.
Yeah, Earl and I were on the absolute same wave. I'm just glad that, like, almost that, everyone in the room here thought the Zindi sucked. Mm-hmm. I have read some people who actually thought it was the best that Enterprise was ever been, and I'm like, are you high, sir? Are you high? I'm not going to say anything else.
It's proof that everything is somebody's favorite, though.
Mm-hmm. You are correct about that, even if they're wrong. I'm being an asshole. I'm just... If someone did like the Zindi thing, I genuinely like to hear why. Because if you saw something I hated, really, I'd like to learn the dissection behind it. But go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, the second thing I want to say is major kudos to Betty, because she actually made it through season 3, despite the fact she hated it and thought it was a total slog.
Yeah, same here, Betty. We are. I guess we're veterans of the Zindi War.
She did better than I could. I could not get through that season.
I do not blame you for tapping out. It did not get any better. In fact, I think it got worse. So.
Well, at least season 4 started to redeem the show a little bit, and then it got axed.
Yeah, I mean, season 4 is absolutely the best that Enterprise ever was, but like that Bare Naked Ladies song, it was just too little, too late. Mm-hmm.
But let me just say this though: In a Mirror Darkly, still my favorite set of episodes from the entirety of Enterprise. It just numerous reasons. You know, I mean, we got to see the Revenge of the Day players for one thing. You know,
Yeah. Hoshi and Mayweather actually got more focus than they've ever gotten in the fucking show ever.
and there was that whole thing tying it in with the Tholian web.
First contact. Oh, oh yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that we actually got to see a full Tholian for a change, like
Yeah.
that was
Even if it was for it to be brutally killed, but still.
it was just so awesome looking. It's a big crystalline spider scorpion thing. That is just the coolest thing ever. And
It looks like something that would have been an enemy from an early 80s arcade game, if that makes sense.
yeah, it does. Or maybe a species in Star Control.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, kind of like the Khmer, yeah.
And I like the fact they actually destroyed the Enterprise. That was not expected. Not to mention that ending.
Oh, yes, most definitely. That's just so ironic that Enterprise's absolutely best thing was the Mirror Universe, which made me think, why didn't more episodes take place? And then I remembered, as Earl said, that DS9 really overused and abused it. So maybe it was just best that was all we got. I don't know.
Yeah.
For Enterprise, literally the best version of Enterprise was the opposite of whatever the show was.
Yes.
Exactly. That's
like you'd
sad.
mentioned, Eugene, that opening theme for the In a Mirror Darkly episodes.
Yeah.
That was great.
The fact that it wasn't It's Been a Long Road is, I mean, Faith of the Heart, wherever the fuck it's called. That like, it could have been, it could have been a song by like a new metal group, and I would have fucking loved it more than Faith of the Heart.
Didn't they take the lyric out for the last season?
No, it was just those 2 episodes.
No,
they,
sadly.
When they got to the Zindi season, they suddenly added a backing band instead of it just being acoustic guitar and orchestra, which
that makes it so much better.
Really?
It made it so much worse. I actually kind of liked the original version of the song. You know, together with the visuals in the open, it really worked for me. But when it's like, okay, hey, we're going to add a bass player and a drum machine to this, it's like, guys, that didn't help.
It's like when they like jazzed up the theme song to Quantum Leap in the last season too. It was like there were like these weird like horns and things going. Like, what are you guys doing?
The theme
Why
song
did
was
shows
fine.
do that? Why do shows do that? Deep Space Nine suddenly added that like rock version of the Deep Space Nine thing, which was a cool theme, but it was not the slow, dun 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 dun.
Contemplative,
Like,
Yeah.
I did think that extra part was maybe a bit weird, but I certainly didn't mind it. That being said, call me an old salt, but I still think that Jerry Goldsmith's theme is unimpeachable. It's unoriginal, but it's just fantastic. The debuting the motion picture is still something that I find very interesting as well.
The music and
Hey, Jay.
I mean, I've always
Hi,
liked
Jay.
the music in First Contact as well, and it was really interesting that they kind of made that the theme for the last season of Picard.
You know what?
Yes.
I did not realize that.
They did.
Huh.
So,
Son of a bitch. Okay.
moving on to what would be my least favorite series. Well, we kind of ran Enterprise into the ground. And truthfully, I didn't finish it. So, I skipped around season 1, 2. I tried to watch some of season 3 and was just, But then, of course, season 4 had some good stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
But, so that being the case, I think I would nominate Picard. I was thrilled when I heard it was coming. And I wasn't expecting a Next Generation reunion because I knew right from the start they said they didn't want to do that. So I'm like, okay, you put Picard in a new situation, give him some interesting characters, so on and so forth, and then they started playing Jenga with them or something. That and the indiscriminate just slaughter of most of the recurring characters from Next Generation. Like, first season, Hugh gets killed.
Yeah.
And, this is Voyager, but still Icheb at one point.
Yeah. It's like I was never big on Seven's kids there, but Ichib did not fucking deserve that.
But even just mentioning him was kind of like, I mean, that show had so many like deep cuts of just like, really? You're going to mention that? Oh, they're dead.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then season 2 committed one of the worst crimes in my eyes, which was completely misusing Q.
And the Borg.
At this point, Voyager already kind of run the Borg into the ground for me, so I wasn't expecting much from that. But just...
Would you call it a miscue?
Definitely a miscue.
Hang on.
But, just that was not a way to send Q off. And I like the way they tried to course correct that at the very end of season 3, but still, it's like, why would you... But what was the point of that entire season? It just... And you got rid of most of the new characters, and... Okay, it's cool you're getting the classic crew back in season 3 now. I'm excited to see that. And for what it was worth, I liked season 3. There was a few parts I didn't really like killing off Shelby and Roe and whoever else died. And there were a few other things they, glossed over. And that bit with Moriarty was such a tease. Mm-hmm. It's like he was in there for what? 50 seconds? And it also raised some questions that I would like some answers to. Like that where they found Moriarty and Data on that space station, whatever it was.
Oh man, all the little... It's like they've got Kirk's body there?
That in particular is the one. Yes, I want to know.
What? Talk about burying the lead, huh?
Yeah, it's like they have Kirk's body there in storage. What are they planning with it? What are they doing with Kirk's body? Are they going to clone him? Are they going to do something else? They're going to make him... Well, or are they just going to keep him on ice forever?
He's good eating.
They're snacking on him. And I guess they had Picard's original body there, too.
Well, maybe they just keep all the captains of the Enterprise that they can hold on to.
Oh man,
for some reason,
you
sign off your entire your corpse when you become a captain.
So they were sad they just couldn't find Cisco.
He wasn't an Enterprise captain though, but they couldn't.
Shit. Yeah,
they couldn't find Pike. They couldn't find Garrett. Maybe Harriman.
That was Alan Ruck, right?
About
from
Jellicoe.
Generations. Gotcha. Oh,
I don't think he counts. He was just kind of in command of the Enterprise for, a day? I know it was
Although he did give us one of the greatest contributions to TNG canon, a.k.a. finally getting Troy in a goddamn uniform, so...
Well, yeah, there was that.
He doesn't totally suck in my mind.
Get that fish out of here.
And let's not forget, too, look at the actor who was playing him. Ronnie Cox.
Ronnie Cox. Dick fucking Jones.
Mm-hmm. Dick, you're fired. Thank you. I've heard he's like the nicest guy in real life, though.
Yeah, I've heard he is extremely nice, counter to being Jones and Velos Cohagen from Total Recall as well.
Angelico.
But, yep.
But I will say that, it just... went into that series expecting so much more and was just really let down by the end, aside from the stuff that I really did like about the third season.
The thing that disappointed me about season 2 is there'd be like a line or something. I'd be like, oh, that's really, like, it would make me laugh. I'd laugh, and then I'd be like, oh, they just stole that line from Star Trek 4. Like, there's like a lot of stuff where they're just like rehashing
the punk on the bus.
Yeah. Or there's something like, oh, you're from space? Like, no, I just work there. It was like, that was from Star Trek 4. It's still funny, but you stole that. You stole that from Star Trek 4.
And that was kind of going back to Slam Into Darkness again. But
yes, please do.
Now, Mike said he almost walked out, and Eugene, you laughed at the con line.
Yeah.
As they're going through that whole bit, I was actually sitting there quoting it because I knew... like, this is just the end of Star Trek 2 with the roles reversed.
Dead ass, that's what it was, and that's what it will always be. You fucking hacks.
It was a problem because the thing with Into Darkness is any of the emotional resonance of that scene, of that moment, doesn't come from Into Darkness. It comes from The Wrath of Khan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And our mutual friend was trying to say that otherwise,
Banana.
Yeah. Not to mention that they somehow, like, ended death, and then we never really talk about that again. Like, death doesn't have to happen anymore.
Super blood.
Yeah, that...
It's super triple blood to you.
As usual, Carl Urban was the best thing about that movie.
Yeah, from what we got. That, and as you would probably bring up, Rob, we did see a somewhat scantily clothed Alice Eve at some point, too, so...
Yeah, I would have brought that up at one point.
So I figured I'd bring it up for you.
Yeah, well, I mainly brought it up right after the movie came out. But, but if there's... I've never seen anyone else who could actually channel DeForest Kelley like Carl Urban. It's like he just had him down.
He was so good.
Yeah, fantastic actor.
But I will say, one of my criticisms about that entire Kelvinverse trilogy was, you know how in the original series it was Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, because, Kirk had to make the decisions. He had Spock advising from one side, McCoy on the other side. And they seem to change it around to be Kirk, Spock, and Uhura. And it's because Uhura was seeing Spock.
I mean, I'm all for giving Uhura more attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is something fantastic that Strange New Worlds has gotten on. But I'm never fond of red string side stories, let's say, where romance plots just bog down everything else. That's a terrible pitfall for fiction to fall into. And
yep.
Yeah, it was something I never really got into Kelvin movies. So.
Also, I gotta say, Jay did pop in, and Prime is here, aka Scroll Boss.
Ah, hey there. Hey, Prime. Hey, sir. And hey, Jay, if you're still around. If you're not, that's okay.
Yep. So
one thing I did like about the Kelvinverse movies, Bruce Greenwood as Pike was
he did do
awesome.
a good job.
He was great for what we got, and then they fucking killed him off early into Darkness. God, fucking goddamn that movie.
Yeah, because they had to turn it into a standard issue revenge plot because our guys are from a utopian federation. Well, we have to do something to really piss them off to sanction them to do whatever horrible things need to be done, and so kill somebody off. It's
such basic bitch
numbers.
Screenwriting 101.
There's actually a book out there called Save the Cat.
Oh yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, it's supposedly a kind of not so much writing prompts as structural advice, but people seem to have taken it as like, this is the manual for how to scramble eggs. And so everything now hews to this formula. And so someone must get kidnapped or someone must get killed. We must go save the cat. And that's why so many movies in the past 20, 25 years have just seemed like the same thing, except you just did a find and replace on the character names.
Yeah, I could get into a whole tangent about how I think movies are objectively worse than they used to be, but that's going to make me sound like Abe Simpson yelling at a cloud, even if there is some truth to it, but,
Old man yells at cloud storage.
Exactly, yes. Yep. Yeah, no, I'm not fond of cloud storage either. I prefer to keep everything on flash drives. But,
as far as anything else about the Kelvinverse movies that I didn't care for, mainly involves Abrams and his lens flares and mystery boxes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh god, knock it off.
I still don't understand what exactly the mystery box is, and I don't care to.
That's the point.
Yes, that's a fair way of putting it.
And the lens flares are just friggin' annoying.
The mystery box is what your fire flowers come out of.
Yeah.
It's the only good mystery box. It's the only one worth keeping around.
Well, what about the ones where you punch them and they just keep giving you coins until they turn to nothing?
Well, you see, that's JJ's mystery box because he keeps punching that one and someone still keeps giving him coin. And here we are having this discussion.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, pretty much.
So yeah, I'd say Picard is probably my least favorite series at this point. And
Yeah.
we'll see what ends up being the winner between that and Enterprise if I ever actually finish Enterprise.
Yeah, Picard just was just such a bust of a property. It feels like they snatched defeat from the jaws of a potential victory, and like it had problems too, but I had almost wished they had gone for the member berries ass premise of just being a TNG reunion, even though, if I'm not mistaken, Earl actually wasn't too fond of that angle. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I think he said something like that.
Yeah, I really actually liked the first season because you were realistic, sort of like Star Trek 2. You were realistically dealing with, okay, we have this living legend who is now treated as kind of a relic.
Yeah.
And surrounded with new characters. My big problem with all of the modern shows, not just Picard, although, season 1 of Picard is a really good example of this, is that every season finale has to be the end of the effing universe.
Yes!
Oh,
Thank
boy.
you! Thank
And
you!
this is a problem that they have inherited from Russell T Davies era Doctor Who, where, we are going to threaten all of reality. It's like, no, if you could write something that has stakes specific to the characters we care about, that would do it.
Lower the stakes. Sometimes you want hamburger, right?
You know the only modern series that's actually been able to pull that off, I think? Lower Decks.
Lower Decks, yes. True. That one, that one didn't really have anything universe-threatening. Like, actually, I guess the last season kind of got into that.
Well, that was the last season, too, so...
Exactly. It had every right to pull that out at that point.
Yeah, and, if they will let that big reveal at the end of Lower Decks stick, then we could just go visit the Kelvinverse whenever we want.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But
all the crossovers you could ever ask for. You could have all the hot spots at the same time.
But, it's like I remember, I think it was the finale of season 2 where Captain Freeman was arrested.
Yes, that was too.
Yeah, that was something that was strictly personal to the characters.
Yeah, and that's not something you often see in Star Trek happening either. It's like, for as much of a homage to the entirety of Trek as it was, Lower Decks actually did have a lot of forward-thinking ideas all its own. So
it makes me think it's time for our Praise Lower Decks session, because it is the best show that they've done. Strange New Worlds is right behind it, though.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm still behind on. I have not seen the last season of Lower Decks.
Oh, you should get on that.
Sorry if I
watch that now.
Sorry if I partially spoiled the last couple episodes, but
it's my fault for being too busy. Oh.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But now I also kind of want to savor it, like.
Yeah, no, absolutely do.
Yes.
I mean, while I'm glad that it didn't get long in the tooth and it ended where it needed to, I still think we could have gotten a bit more, and I'm sad that it ended when it did.
I cannot believe that the live action crossover with Strange New Worlds worked so well.
It did.
Yes. That was hilarious. I loved
how
it.
that was going to go, and it was just like, yeah, that was really good.
Riker.
Yeah, the Riker bit.
I have rewatched that episode of Strange New Worlds more than any other.
Yes.
Because it
deserves it.
That good.
I swear, Worf's honor. Oh, jeez.
Love it. Fucking love it.
Oh, don't say Q. They have more of a Trelane thing going on right now. But
no, I really can't think of any downsides to Lower Decks. Like, I feel like I'd just be scrambling to nitpick at it. Like, what bad could we say about it? I don't know. I don't know.
Just that there isn't more of it, I guess?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not enough Moopsy.
Yeah.
Granted, yes.
I would have brought Moopsy back in another ep, but, like, I guess it's best not to abuse too much of a good thing, so.
That, and you know what else I miss? The dog.
Cube Dog.
Cube Dog is great. Just, I did a video which I posted on my personal YouTube channel a while back, which is my 10 favorite moments from Lower Decks or something like that. I called it, and the Cube Dog is pretty much right up near the top. Just how it just randomly comes walking along, turns into a cube, and just chunk, 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 chunk. Anyway, but Moopsie made number 1. Spoilers.
Yep.
I'm also really, I was thrilled with that bit where the DS9 episode when that one Orion who's always bragging about how great it is to be an Orion. And then Tendy just totally shows him up. You open that with a wine opener. That last bit when they're charging into the engine room and she's just like, ah! And then one guy's like, ah! And he jumps over the side. Laugh so hard.
I want to watch the entire. I want to watch the entire series again. It helps that it is mercifully that's half as long as your conventional Trek episodes. That makes it easier to slam down. Which
I mean, there's so many in jokes that I just miss. You know, like
yeah.
Yeah, to go back and like watch it again or look at the write ups afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the Easter eggs. But I mean, the whole series is an Easter egg. So
yeah, but it's so well done. I was not expecting.
I always describe it as I've described it as it's Futurama if every joke was a Star Trek joke.
Yeah,
that's a great way of putting it.
I was not expecting to see the skeleton of the giant Spock from the animated series show up.
Yeah.
There was one reference that was in I think it was the last season, that I read about some article somewhere that was so esoteric, and it made me wonder if the universe was just kind of eyeing my own every move and just extracted something right out of my brain or Rob's brain or whatever. But the fucking comedian that Joe Piscopo played was even referenced at some point, which, wow. That is the deepest reach you can possibly ever have. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
You know, really close in terms of Easter eggs and mentions is Star Trek Prodigy, which I realize everyone kind of...
Yeah.
A lot of people have that kind of set aside in a box as, oh, that's the kids' show, that's the Nickelodeon show. It is surprisingly mature, and it is very connected to the entire rest of the universe.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they go almost as hard as Lower Decks does. If you have not done Star Trek Prodigy yet, it's also half-hour episodes. There's 40 of them, 2 seasons of 20 episodes. And it really picks up the Voyager storyline in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And it just does a lot with it. And it kind of feels like, this is going to sound weird, it kind of feels like the DS9 of the current era of Star Trek in terms of what I was saying earlier about when they were making Voyager, you know, they had the entire network breathing down their necks, where DS9 was syndicated and got to do whatever. Prodigy kind of feels like it also got to do whatever.
Yeah, they did a damn good job at it.
Is it confirmed that there won't be any more?
Good question.
I haven't heard anything. I mean, I occasionally hear stuff, but I haven't heard anything indicating that anyone's seriously.
Okay. I mean, I know it's a miracle that we got the second season. So.
Yeah, it was a really torturous thing just getting season 2 out of them because they canceled it off of P+ whenever the streaming bubble started to burst, and then we had to convince Netflix to pick it up, and I'm kind of waiting for the rest of the streaming bubble to burst because I don't think it has helped. And this is a whole different conversation. I don't think it has helped how we consume entertainment at all.
No.
Oh no, I'm right with you there, man. It's I'm bullshit.
I'm still irritated at both Paramount Plus and Disney Plus for a couple of things. Paramount Plus because they called themselves the home of all things Star Trek, and
then started dropping pieces of it, like either the movies or like the odd numbered movies or some weird stuff like that, and then they just drop kick Prodigy.
Mm-hmm. And
something cyberpunk bullshit future without all the interesting parts. Something.
yeah, and with Disney Plus, my issue is they drop kicked the Willow series so hard they basically booted it out of existence.
Oh yeah,
That's fucking bogus.
I was only able to watch like one episode of it before they killed it. So that they killed it at the same time they killed Hulu killed Why the Last Man, and I had never gotten around to watching that after like I loved the comic series when it was around. So I decided to watch that one, and then I didn't have enough time to watch the whole Willow series. But I really liked it. I'm sort of a lukewarm like fan of the movie. Like it's okay, right? But the series I thought had a lot of potential. And now the only way to watch it is to buy a bootleg Blu-ray on eBay.
Pretty much. But you know we're going off a different topic here, but I did watch the entire season of Willow, and they did set it up for another season. There was definitely was leading to some intriguing places, and then it just was completely and totally unceremoniously axed to the point of non-existence.
I didn't expect we'd have the future sucks and I want to fucking kill it segment in the podcast, so I'd like to ask we move on.
Sure, let's move on.
But I did want to say, actually, Earl, I actually finally started Prodigy, and it's very promising so far. Although the pilot felt a little more like Star Wars than it did Star Trek, for better or worse. But the next episode, you know what? That's a good point.
I think they are trying to. I think they're trying to get the crowd who's like, "Oh, remember Star Wars Rebels? This is Star Trek Rebels." Because it's kind of got that same energy.
Yeah, kind of.
But it really takes off on its own steam once they have the ship and they have control of the ship and they go nuts with it. I mean, within the first 10 episodes, they are dropping absolute all-time classics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the episode right afterward felt a lot more Star Trek-y, especially with Hollow Janeway advising Dal to do what to do and what not to, and he's just like, nuts to you, Cyber Lady. I'm the captain, and no, you might be right about this. And that did feel like a straight up Trek, and I'm very much interested to see more. I would have slammed down Prodigy before this cast if I could have, but I was busy slamming down Discovery instead at Rob's urging. And Discovery is an interesting one to discuss. I know opinions on it are pretty mixed, and I certainly have criticisms about it. But on the whole, I liked it.
Oh, yeah. I'm just sorry.
I'm in the last season of that. I'm like a few episodes into the last season of Discovery, but it is very good.
I slept on it for several years, and I'm actually rather sorry I did.
Yeah.
Discovery was such a weird first season. Like the movie or the pilot, or I guess the 2-part episode, or whatever, sets it up to be a totally different show from what it ends up being.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was kind of like mixed on it for like the first half of the first season until you get the reveal, right?
Yep.
Of where the captain's from, and then I realized that it is the most Star Trekiest Star Trek that has ever Star Trekked. Aside from
exactly, it was so much more Trek than I expected it to be, and you have all these critics saying, "Oh, this is the Star Trek I grew up with," and it's like, no, fuck you. This is Trek as hell, man. I don't know what you're talking about.
Aside from the thing that Star Trek keeps doing of retconning in family members you didn't know about,
yeah, there was that.
Well. Fair.
The series has been like a different show like every season. And that's not as bad of a thing as you would expect it to be. And the fact that it shows us the future of Star Trek is pretty special. When I guess the only other time we ever really saw the true future of Star Trek was in like the Star Trek Online game.
Yeah.
Fair point.
My only major criticism of Discovery is the fact that it seems like every season has to be about the giant threat.
Yeah,
as Earl was saying earlier,
we're going to end all reality, but
you really could have just done like a whole season of just like, let's just rebuild the Federation, right? And that could have, that's a big enough stake, right, to have.
I'd say.
Of how do you bring all these factions together, all these different planets together, And the only way they could figure out how to do is to put the universe in danger again and bring them all together to face like a common threat. It's like, okay.
Oh well.
Maybe Starfleet Academy will give them a chance to do that with more of a slow, deliberate burn
Oh, here's hope.
than trying to ramp up the threat. I mean, surely there is something. It is more of a challenge, and this is really a story we need right now. It is more of a challenge to build that coalition without this all-encompassing threat that is a threat to everyone.
Yeah.
It's more difficult to build that when you have everyone worrying about, what their stake is. What am I getting out of it? If you have this giant threat, it's, I don't want to die, so we better, restart Federation 2.0. But it's more of a challenge to do that when everyone's head is kind of up their own backside.
Yeah.
And they're worried about their own territorial, parochial things going on, and not worried about whatever it is that is going to kill us all.
Very true.
Yeah. Indeed.
I will say one other thing. I'm not really thrilled that they renamed Vulcan.
That's actually a deep cut from early 70s fan lore.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
No shit. Really?
Yeah, it was from the heyday of the fanzine, the fan fiction zines, between the end of the original series and the motion picture. Yeah, the name that they picked out of that was from fan lore, and so it was, those of us who were old enough kind of perked up our ears and went, like, it's official now. Okay.
Yeah,
So-
it's kind of interesting how they really have embraced the fandom and the sort of canon adjacent stuff, like naming number 1 after Una McCormick, one of the authors of the Star Trek novels.
Shit.
Although it's so appropriate because Una, sounds like Uno and number 1 and all that. I think that works out really well.
Hey,
But
numero uno or numero una. Don't call her that.
Strange New Worlds, that first season finale, and really the second one, but mainly the first one, that is a really good example of a season finale that is proportional to the show. Because they've arrested Una, they've taken off with her, and Pike's like, I'll get her back. That's not the end of the universe. It is proportional to our characters. It is a big effing deal to our characters. That's all we need.
Yeah.
We don't need giant red tentacles coming out of a wormhole. Whatever the hell that was about.
So
Yeah.
so about Discovery, I think now that I think back on it, I really hated a lot of how they handled Klingons. Was that the first season? I don't even remember what season it was, but like
Mostly the first season, I think somewhat into the second.
and the time crystals thing, like I did not like the time crystal plot line, but the payoff of that is something really interesting, and that Pike is aware of his destiny.
Yeah, that's how Strange New Worlds started.
Yeah.
I actually got to
on track anyway,
Yeah, I got to Strange New Worlds before I did Discovery, and I didn't fully realize that the reason why Pike was on sabbatical was because of this thing that happened in Discovery, and that's a nice bit of continuity splitting off of that. But I actually did like quite a bit about the first 2 seasons of Discovery, but I do have to agree it found much more of its voice in the latter 3 seasons, where it took place in the super, super future and the very hyper far future, and it did feel like it could be more of its own thing, to be sure. Although, and if Betty's still here, shout out to agreeing with me on this matter, the character of Cleveland Booker feels much more like a Star Wars character than a Star Trek. Did anyone else get that vibe?
I did.
As long as he's got that cat with him, I'm cool with it.
Oh,
yeah, Grudge is great. She's a queen. She's the greatest.
He does feel a little bit, out of context for Star Trek, but I think that may be why I like him.
Yeah. I didn't know what to make of Book at first, but he really grew on me. And hey, we actually have a relationship with the main character that doesn't go to pot, so that's nice.
Well, and the other thing about Book being, kind of seeming like, oh, this is not a kind of character we've seen in this universe. It tells you how much the universe has changed through that time jump.
Very
Very
true.
good point. Yes. Yes, but yeah, no. Like I said, all the main characters really grew in me. Michael started out pretty impetuous, but really feels like she came a long way. And Paul and Hugh were adorable. Action Saru, I just can't believe fucking Doug Jones, who I've been a fan of for a long time, is a main Star Trek character. And I cracked up so much when he just got to play himself without any makeup at that point in the third season. That was adorable. And of course, Sylvia Tilly is my wife, so there's that.
Everyone loves Tilly.
She's so great.
For sure.
But I was trying to think. There was some other stuff that intrigued me about Discovery. Some of the reveals they made, like that one episode where they had that hologram of that alien who crossed over from the Kelvin timeline in a TNG uniform, no less.
Yeah, that was crazy.
And then they went and referenced that in this. Earl, you may know more about this than I do, but it's some kind of thing they're doing on YouTube. It's like Star Trek with a bunch of numbers after it.
Yeah, that's basically those. There's a series of those short films, and they're produced by a company called Otoy, which the CEO of that company is fairly good friends with Rod Roddenberry.
Yeah.
Oh.
But they got some kind of permission from CBS to kind of play in that sandbox a little, and they're kind of like tone poems. There's very little in the way of dialogue. It's all imagery.
Yeah.
And apparently, and this is something I had to read up on, and there was a big thing on trekmovie.com about it, where the guy who, the Otoy guy, had to explain exactly which novels and comics this was referencing. And it's like comics from the 80s or early 90s.
Cool.
And I'm like, okay, that's cool. If you don't already know that, what's the story?
Yeah.
So it's really kind of a tech demo more than anything that they have really perfected, basically real-time deep faking.
Yeah, Spock and Kirk in particular. Wow.
Yeah, and so it's kind of impressive from that standpoint. I just kind of want a little bit. I mean, look, I am Mr. Deep Cut. That's what I love about Lower Decks. But some of this stuff goes so far off the path. I'm just sitting there like, okay. But to me, it's just like it's like a fan film. It's just someone actually named Roddenberry is involved with it.
Yeah.
I was actually pretty thrilled to see Robin Curtis again.
Oh yeah.
And
Another
then
deep cut.
that same alien from that episode of Discovery showed up. And it's like, I remember, because it had been a while since I seen that episode, and I saw it, I was like, where have I seen him before? Oh. What's he doing there? What's going on?
He's here to hand you this comm badge.
Yeah. That's it. But still.
I haven't seen any of those shorts. I don't even know what you guys are talking about. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, they're all on YouTube, so definitely worth looking up.
Yeah, just look up the YouTube channel for Otoy, Otoy, and you'll find them. There's a series of them, and there's also they also do a great series of interviews with various past cast members who may or may not have had involvement with these shorts, and those are almost the real hidden gem on that channel.
Nice.
I think
they're very warts and all.
Yeah, like I'm still watching that last season, but I was very impressed and surprised that they were going back to the progenitors, or whatever they called them on Star Trek.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. I mean, okay. I mean, Star Trek is deep cuts all the way down now at this point.
Yeah. Who thought we'd ever see the that race from the what was it called? The Chase, that episode of TNG?
Chase. Yep.
That's right. That was the one.
Yeah, the one thing we dare not ever follow up on is the TNG episode Conspiracy. Never.
Which
Of course not.
They are never going to do it.
Nope.
They're never going to do it. But I did have, I don't think I actually wrote the script for it, but I had an idea for a story where those aliens would have come through the wormhole at Deep Space Nine.
That would be rad.
And I was going to, I think, have them like infiltrate through like a shipment of self-sealing stem bolts or something like that. But
As you do, yeah.
You know, I think one of the, or maybe possibly a couple of novels that took place post DS9 actually did go back to those aliens from Conspiracy.
Oh, that's
nice.
Didn't they connect them to the Trill somehow?
Yes.
I forgot that.
Yes, they did.
Which is not really what I would have
not-
done with it,
that's not
but
right.
No, me either.
kind of my
It's
first rule.
something.
My first rule of media criticism is, people like to roll out the phrase, "Oh, that's lazy writing." It's like, have you tried writing a script? It's not
Exactly.
something lazy people do, and so I think the correct thing to say is they made a different creative choice than I would have. I
Yeah.
feel like because that's what's really being said.
I'd like to see those aliens go up against the Founders.
That would be
Yeah.
interesting.
I mean, I like to think that the conspiracy aliens got written out of existence because of that Mortal Kombat ass fatality that happened in it. And, like, the network just vaporized it from all canon and all parallel universes forever for that.
You just blow up one guy's head and people never stop talking about it.
Nope.
Yeah, pretty much.
Although on the subject of those conspiracy aliens versus the Dominion, that reminds me of an idea I'd had for another crossover story that never got written. Basically, the Borg land on Earth, and they show up right in the middle of the war against the machines. So it's the
nice.
Borg versus Skynet, with the human resistance caught in the middle. I could never figure out how that was going to end up.
Badly for the humans, one suspects.
Oh, definitely. But
Totally.
who would win, the Borg or Skynet? Whoever wins, the human resistance loses.
What gets me is the master mold for those claymation critters from Conspiracy. Someone bought that at auction, and I'm like, how did you not turn around and get a license to make like chocolate critters that we could eat?
Oh my god.
or like gummy critters?
That'd be great. That actually.
That would be amazing.
Okay, you
mean-
just reminded me of something, Earl.
Uh-oh. That did?
What happened is Betty and I were on vacation a couple months ago, and we stopped at my childhood candy store up in Massachusetts, and they had gummies shaped like lobsters. So we brought a bag back for my granddaughter, and she absolutely loved them. She didn't call them lobster gummies. She called them her monster gummies. I could see her doing that with gummy conspiracy aliens. And in that case, she'd probably be correct.
That would be pretty great.
Yeah.
Snarb says, I'm sorry for not catching this earlier. I have tried writing scripts before, and I think I ran out of ideas less than 10 pages in, lol. So kudos to people that can write consistently.
Yeah, no, it's not fucking easy.
Well, thank you, Snarb. Unfortunately, it's the only thing I can do well, so...
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, same.
I did write one
guess.
script once, and it was only because it was a college assignment. When I turned it in, I got an A+ on it, though, because I thought outside the box. The assignment was basically, you have to have this guy and a girl go on a date, and these are the stipulations here. He has to have gotten her number off the men's room wall at the YMCA, and a rubber duck has to be involved.
Oh yeah, I write this.
Well, a lot of people were writing stuff like, he stepped on a rubber duck and this kind of thing happened. No. What did I do? I had him go on a date, and he's driving a car from his place of employment, Ducks R Us, with a giant rubber duck on the roof. That when it's like they're starting to get hot and heavy, and they climb into the back seat, start making out and whatnot, and he kicks the thing that starts up the duck on the roof, and it just lights are flashing. This thing is quack quack quack, and that's when all the the neighbors start coming out, and she's all embarrassed, storms inside, and he bangs his head into the steering wheel, and the thing comes unstuck, and the duct shuts off. But the neighbors are all still there, and now they've gotten torches and pitchforks, and they're ready to go ahead and kill the guy. He takes off, stops a couple blocks later when he realizes they're not chasing him anymore. Turns on the radio, hears "Loser" by Beck, and turns it right off. Then he hears tires screeching behind him, and he sees pickup trucks full of angry homeowners waving their torches. Let's not cook the bastard! And he screams, and that's where it fades out.
Wow.
The instructor asked if he could keep that to show future classes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Which just goes to show you can give, a room full of writers the same prompts, and you will end up with some very different stories.
This is very true. And yeah, that definitely drove it home. God, I must have been, when was that? 97?
Why is that not on your website? Why is that not posted someplace?
Oh, it is.
It is?
Yes, it's actually in Eating Candy in Outer Space.
Is it in there?
Mm-hmm. Pretty sure it is.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I own a copy of that book.
Yeah, you can read the whole script.
All right.
So whether you got it digitally or physically, it's in there. Yes, my book's still on sale.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah. All right, so that script aside, one thing we really haven't touched on so far is the movies. I mean, we talked about Into Darkness because how can you not talk about Into Darkness because it was so bad?
I would prefer not to talk about Into Darkness ever. In
Yes,
fact, don't mention it again in this fucking stream.
Yes, so we're not going to talk about that one anymore. We did touch on the Kelvin trilogy as a whole briefly, but, and we've skipped around to a couple of the different movies and the rest of the series. But, what would you say that your favorite movie out of the first 10 is, Earl?
The motion picture.
Ah.
Good answer.
Choice.
It's kind of a time and a place thing because, I remember the hype surrounding it. And it's like I literally have back here on the wall somewhere a few Star Trek the Motion Picture Happy Meal boxes.
That is the
Nice.
one thing I remember from that because I was too young to go see the movie, but I remember going to McDonald's with my parents and seeing them have these. I think I actually got one, but of course the box is long, long gone.
Yeah, it's just, to me, it's because it was directly overseen by Gene Roddenberry. Mm-hmm. This is like 180 proof Star Trek. This is what he was trying to set down, free of networks or anything else. This is what Star Trek is.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a huge amount of visual world building in that you have to just kind of stop and freeze frame it and be like, okay, this is what they're doing in the future. This is how they get around. They have flying taxi cabs, flying subway trains, whatever.
I do.
And
I actually do have a question about that one scene, though.
Yeah, what is that?
Why are there so many people walking around in togas?
Because togas, much like hexagons, are the future.
Noted. But go on.
And just so much about it, and the fact that it unfolds at the pace that it unfolds, instead of having to blow stuff up constantly for 2 hours, I find it so... I know people have spent years and years saying, oh, it's so boring. I find it so relaxing.
The motionless picture? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we've all heard the various nicknames applied to it. It's just like, okay, this is like watching it unfold in real time, and it's not exhausting, like so many modern action movies are. And so, yeah, between that and one of the best soundtracks that was ever created for a movie of any genre.
Totally.
Spot on.
I love the motion picture. I still like, I know they did a lot of work on the redoing the director's edition for HD recently. Mm-hmm. And, I bought that packet, the big package that had the bumper stickers, the reproduction bumper stickers and things in it. But I still prefer the original theatrical cut from 1979.
Hmm.
It was very much a time and a place, and it was kind of the Uncola versus Star Wars. It was
I
very
can see
very
that.
contemplative and kind of trying to be a little bit 2001 there at the end,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
But there are worse things to try to be. It wasn't trying to be Howard the Duck.
Yeah.
That is true.
I'll say there's one thing I love about that movie. It's basically anything comes out of Bones' mouth. Just a moment, Captain Sir. I'll explain what happened.
But what's up with that? The bling that he had in that movie.
that medallion. That is the
Disco
most.
Bones.
Pretty
And
much,
I do have a hard time with the pajamas, the pajama uniforms. But
The uniforms are the worst part of that movie, I will have to
I
say.
actually kind of like them.
I like
Nope.
the Admiral's uniform.
That's fair.
Not the standard ones. But
I mean, at least they weren't constantly changing uniforms throughout the film.
yeah, that's true.
Every scene you look away, it's like, oh, you're in a different uniform now. What?
She changed her
We're
hair.
not going to explain what's going on, but you're going to change into a new uniform midway through the movie. It's going to make sense. No, it's really not.
But how could Ilea change her hair if she has no hair? That is one.
Hey, you're asking the wrong guy.
Hey, you're not the only one here who's losing hair.
The losing, it's gone. It's not coming back.
No, you're rocking the Picard then.
And to your point as well about the stakes not always having to be the end of the universe. Like, yes, in that movie those were the stakes, but to have the solution be such a personal one and such a they didn't have to blow something up.
Nope.
They didn't have to run out a time bomb, or it was just a sacrifice, and it was born out of love. Like, it was really interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of like they invented the Kobayashi Maru, a movie, early.
Yeah,
Because
Exactly.
it's not about blowing things up.
Nope.
And so, it's kind of weird that they don't bring that into it until Star Trek II, because in my mind, Decker passes the test.
mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe it's because he is, lovesick beyond belief and grieving beyond the ability to think straight, but he does solve the problem.
Now, I think this is the case. Is he canonically the son of Matt Decker from the original series, or is it a coincidence and then that's fanon?
I believe they have said that he is canonically the son of Matt Decker, and so
yeah.
there's like multiple levels of grief going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the redemption, right?
Yeah, because Daddy Decker didn't do so great. He got eaten by the Doomsday Machine, so
Yep.
or blew himself up trying not to be eaten by the Doomsday Machine. But yeah, the motion picture it really is a good movie, but it's kind of one of the last gasps of a different era of movie making.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very 70s pre-blockbuster
Star
kind
Wars
of movie. Yeah, very pre-Star Wars, because the development curve goes much like the black hole. The development curve for that movie precedes Star Wars coming out. A problem that I have with a lot of the movies from 5 onward is that they are all sticking very slavishly, and this includes the next-gen movies, to the basic plot outline of Star Trek II. Like, we're going to have this really literate villain, we've got to blow them up real good, and it just becomes a recurring thing. It's like, oh, that's the one that worked, let's keep trying to do that again. And no, really, the best one is the one where they don't, and they go shave the whales, or save the whales,
Yeah.
or save them and then shave them.
Either way, it works.
It's a good point about it being a very different era of filmmaking as well. I mean, look at like Superman the movie. It's like a 3-hour film. You're like an hour and a half in before you see Superman. They spend like the first part of the movie of like young Clark. Like, they take their time. I mean, they spend the first part of the movie on Krypton for like 20 minutes or whatever, and then you've got like Smallville. They took their time, to really to really get you emotionally invested and really immerse yourself in that film's world in a way that films don't do anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And on top of that, Clark's dad gave him better advice than a later Clark's dad gave him advice.
That's my Into the Darkness. That's my Into the Darkness rant.
About Man of Steel, huh? Such a wasted opportunity.
Man of Steel is such a waste of good actors and reasonably good special effects, and they don't understand the characters.
Nope.
I would like to interject by saying there was at least one point in Man of Steel's favor that I could laud to it. It wasn't Batman v Superman.
Point.
That reminds me of my favorite IMDb user review I have ever read on anything, and I forget what it was. But this will never leave me. It says, "At least the end credits were skillfully executed."
Oh shit! That's yeah, that's fair.
Let's give a few more points to Superman the movie for also not being Superman 3 or 4.
Yep.
Yeah, although like Earl can find something good in all Star Trek, I can still find good things in Superman 3 and 4. Mostly it's like little moments, here and there. I mean, that junkyard scene is art, My favorite thing in Superman 4 though is when Clark is on a double date. He's supposed to be meeting with Lois as Superman, but then he's on a date with Lacey as Clark, and he has to keep running back and forth between the two of them. That's just comedy gold. Like, that's Judge Brilliant, and he has to keep finding excuses for keep.
Sounds like Mrs. Doubtfire ripped that off.
It actually sounds like it came straight out of an Archie comic.
Well, it worked. I mean, it was fun. It worked.
Okay, yeah. I'll see your point about Superman 3. I was in it for the Atari stuff that they did in there.
Which, if that was an actual Atari game, would have been I haven't played the Superman Atari game, but if that were an actual game, I think that would be fun too.
If Prime is still here, he would back me up on this. Superman for the Atari 2600 was one of the best ways to use the character in a game.
And probably still is the best video game based on him. Still.
Yeah, I recently read an article about it, and it does sound pretty fascinating. There's basically like an adventure. It's built on the adventure engine.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But it's like you don't have to worry about Superman getting killed. The kryptonite just stuns him. Basically, it takes away his powers. You have to rebuild a bridge and put Luthor and his men in jail, and then change into Clark and go back to the Daily Planet. Simple.
Yep, that works.
And you have X-ray vision. You got X-ray vision. You can fly.
Yeah, I still have to finish the NES game, which is kind of baffling.
Yeah, that I don't get that. Well, why does Superman have to ride the subway?
Well, to be fair, he does that in the 2600 game too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but
okay.
It's just a quicker way to get around the map.
Okay.
Although, the less said about any Superman game past the 2600 one, the better, aside from the arcade game, which was great. So, but
yeah.
Great's overselling it, but if you're comparing it to the other Superman games, then it's okay.
Exactly.
At least it had the John Williams theme, which is a very
done by Zontada.
Yes.
That's worth the more than worth the price of admission.
Mm-hmm. So, to kind of dial it back from our little Superman offshoot here, back to the original series, and it looks like that's Prime right there, right? Let me see. Yes, the Mego Star Trek the Motion Picture 3 3/4 action figures. Those were really nicely sculpted. I always wanted to get a set of those, but I never did.
I haven't gotten into like they made like model kits too. Like I always thought it was really interesting how some of the film productions and the TV productions would actually go and get those kits to use in usually as like extra ships or something in the show or the movie because they were going to blow up or whatever. But
yeah,
that speaks to the quality I think of those model kits.
Yeah, those. And I know they used them on the original series a few times. But yeah, I remember those action figures because they were just. Speaking of which,
Oh.
check out what Earl's got.
Mm-hmm.
Honest,
Oh, yep. There you go. Those little action figures.
complete on card and everything. Extremely cool.
Is that all Star Trek stuff back there? Or is it a mix of other things?
Oh, there's a bit of everything. I mean, there's like comic stuff over on this wall. There's real space program. Like when I was growing up, if you were a child of the 70s, die-cast metal space shuttles as far as the eye could see.
Yes.
And, I had a whole fleet of them. And in fact, I still have my originals, and I can tell you which one was Columbia, and which one was Challenger, and which one was Discovery, and so on.
Nice.
But there's Doctor Who, there's Star Trek, there's Star Wars, there's various random pop culture, and it's a bunch of stuff that's just built up and followed me around for 40 years.
Hey, you still got your
like
little robot buddies around, right?
Yeah, floaty robot buddies. There's a whole selection of them. Old battery-powered Coleco tabletop arcade games.
Nice.
It's just... Yeah, I work from home, so it has to be my happy place.
I hear that.
There.
Yeah. Well, when I used to work in an office, though, I had my friend Tori made me 3 tribbles, like handmade 3 tribbles for me, and they would live on my desk, and they were sort of a litmus test because somebody would come into my office, and if they were like, "Oh, tribbles," then I would know, they were good people. Then if they came in like, "What are those?" Then I was like, "Oh, you don't watch Star Trek. Like, you're not a geek. Let me handle your requests accordingly."
Nice.
I can relate to that. I have a very floofy black cat. He makes me tribbles just walking through the room.
Hey, just an aside here. Recently, Betty and I went out to a local antique store, and I actually saw something I'd never seen before there. MASH action figures. You know, any of those,
shit.
Yeah, I've heard of those before. They were out at around the same time as the Love Boat action figures. I
What?
shit not. Yes.
Okay, MASH I could buy, but the fucking Love Boat? That's not what I expect to have action figures made of.
And around the same time also the Dukes of Hazzard action figures.
Those I remember
That's
quite
somewhat
well.
more believable. Yeah.
But
Although that reminds me of the SNL skit with Patrick Stewart. On
Love Boat: The Next Generation.
Love Boat: The Next Generation.
And of course for love.
That was great. But yeah, they actually had 4 of the MASH figures there. They were all still on their cards, a little beat up. They wanted $30 a piece for them. I think they had Hot Lips, Colonel Potter, Hawkeye, and one other one I can't remember off the top of my head. But I was so tempted to buy all 4 of them, but I do not have that kind of money right now.
I regret several years ago they were available for the blink of an eye, and I think it was like New York City Comic Con. And it was a box set of Kenner-style figures, like the old Kenner Star Wars figures, but it was the Golden Girls.
Oh,
Yes,
wow.
I remember
Nice.
seeing those.
Bought those in a second because I would totally put Sylvia in the gunner chair of my Kenner Death Star.
My God.
Because she outranks the Emperor.
Yeah.
So fun fact, I actually I worked for Lifetime Television for about 9.5 years, the home of the Golden Girls for a very long time.
Really?
And since you were talking about the song that you play to signal to everyone that it's time to go, every year when we would have our holiday party, the last song that they would play would be the extended edition of the Golden Girls theme song. So that played us out
Really?
of the holiday parties at Lifetime.
I'm just looking over here. I got a... No one can see this, but I've got a... Basically, it's a lanyard with a whole bunch of buttons and stuff attached to it. Right at the bottom, hanging next to my Lego Indiana Jones keychain, is my set of Golden Girl buttons. And something just fell off.
Not anymore.
No, it's still there. Something else fell off. But yeah, it's got all 4 of them on there. Sophia says, "Picture it, Sicily."
Nice.
I confess to being a Golden Girls fan. I watched the show in the 80s all the time. I didn't get half the jokes, but I got them. I get them now. Let's see if I finally fell
What about
down.
Golden Palace?
I've seen that too.
I have no idea what that is. I thought that was like a casino game on like the Game Boy or something.
It was the sequel show to the Golden Girls, basically, after B. Arthur left.
What?
Yeah, they ended up buying a hotel, and Cheech Marin worked there, and so did War Machine from the Marvel movies, I think.
A young Don Cheadle. I'll be fucked. Huh. Wow.
It was interesting. Didn't last very long.
Yeah, there's probably a reason why I haven't heard of it. It kind of sounds like, like, the girls were a fantastic ensemble, but it kind of feels like B. Arthur's the king piece that you really don't want to get rid of, in my opinion. So, I couldn't see that having a lot of legs in the water.
It's
But,
also part of the Star Trek canon, of course.
ow.
Now, I know how she connects to Star Wars canon, but
Yes. Her song was the least shitty part of that whole experience. I'll say that.
Yes. And I will
No,
say...
it was the commercials. The commercials were the vintage commercials were the best, and one of the commercials was for Tobor, which is robot spelled backwards. Make sure that you know when you listen to it was this robot that you could steer it around and it would pick things up and put things down and whatever. And at the very end of there would be like Tobor can lift, blah blah blah. And then the very end was like Tobor is robot spelled backwards. So we screened the Star Wars Holiday Special at my science fiction club, and people were not too pleased with it. But we all love Tobor, so we actually got a vintage Tobor off of eBay, and he was part of the club for a little while.
Nice.
I'm just disappointed I never learned how to fight the Frizzies. I feel like if I had learned to fight the Frizzies at a younger age, I wouldn't be bald now.
You know, one thing I'll give South Park is that they actually showed us how to fight the Frizzies.
Yeah, that is true.
Fighting the Frizzies at 11. Oh, boy. Yeah, you're right,
So,
Prime.
Star Trek.
Yeah, that's right. We are talking about Star Trek, aren't we?
I don't want to be an a-hole. I mean, I like hearing about all of this, all of these other branches of
This is how our
20th
roundtables
century
go,
memorabilia,
though, Mike.
but I know. It's just I don't have as much to say about them. You guys are all much smarter and more learned than I am. I just feel like I'm kind of hopping on one leg here when, I barely know much about the Golden Girls except this one episode that my roommate in college had me watch, and I thought it was good.
All right, then. Well, let's move on to Eugene, then. Your favorite Star Trek movie?
I mean, it's got to be obviously Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, but if I had to choose another the runner-up, I'd probably go with Star Trek: First Contact. Actually,
Both good choices.
Yeah. Very, yes.
They basically made a sort of zombie movie, like and one of the action-based Star Trek films that somehow I think really worked. And the time travel, like wobbly, timey-wimey. All good stuff.
Borg. Sounds Swedish. All right, then. What about you, Mike?
At this point, I think I would have to say Star Trek 4 is my favorite.
The one with the whales.
Yeah, being the comedy film, quote-unquote, that it is, and certainly less serious than the three that came before it. It's just so extremely entertaining, and last time I saw it, stuck out actually how more action-y and thrilly it was, and I remember it being like, fuck, the part where Chekhov's getting interrogated as like a Russian agent. Oh shit, that's kind of harsh. It has a lot more. It just has a great pace and a very nice narrative hook running into it. But like, it's still very much Trek. Like, it wasn't just an excuse to have the cast muck about in San Francisco, even though that is half of the draw right there. But
yeah, well, double dumbass on you.
Yes, so much just quotable from there. When we woke up, we had these bodies.
Exactly.
I'll say nuclear vessels. No. But yeah, no, Force just... I mean, it's a wacky premise. And like, I'm not sure if that method of time travel they did with slingshotting around the sun ever worked again or came up again in the series ever.
It originated.
Came up
Oh,
before.
yes, so much. It originated in The Naked Time.
Yeah.
Oh, you're
Um,
right. God, I'm
and then
stupid.
they used it again, but as a throwaway thing at the beginning of Assignment Earth, which was supposed to be a backdoor pilot for a series starring Gary Seven.
The
But
Gary
like
7 episode, right?
yeah, but it opens and the Enterprise is in orbit around Earth in like 1967 or whatever, and they're just like using our time travel, slingshotting effect or whatever, from the previous episode. We've come back to observe the blah blah blah.
Well,
And yeah,
my memory's terrible. I'm dumb, but they haven't used it since, I guess. I don't know.
Season 2 of Picard, beginning of season 2 of Picard. That's how they
Damn
all
it.
get back to the past.
Yep.
My memory sucks. I quit.
There's been a few books they used it in too. Like the Engines of Destiny was one of them. I don't know if anyone read that
what
one.
was that? Yeah, I'm not sure I know.
Basically, it's a Scotty book. He's
Nice.
he's so consumed with guilt over the supposed death of Jim Kirk on board the Enterprise B that when he gets pulled, when he ends up in the Next Generation, he's still got that whole thing going on. So he comes up with this plan to go back and rescue Kirk just as the Nexus hits the Enterprise B. Problem is, when he does that, he kind of screws up everything.
Well, shit.
So there was no Picard at that point to go ahead and stop the board from going back in time and assimilating Earth in First Contact. Because
Whoopsie doodle.
Because Picard and the entire Enterprise crew was killed in Generations.
That's harsh.
So basically they have to put everything right. It's an interesting read if you ever get a chance to read it.
Sounds good, yeah.
Check that one out.
Yeah.
Engines of Destiny, you said?
Yep. Kirk's
I
like,
may even own a copy of that for all I know.
and the interesting thing is Kirk's like, yeah, while I appreciate what you did, Scotty, I think you screwed up. All right, so as far as my favorite Star Trek movie, I'm going to be the odd man out here. You may be surprised, possibly even shocked by my answer. But no, it's not Nemesis or Section 31 or Star Trek 5. So rest your minds at ease there. Star Trek 3.
Fair. It's easily the most underrated of the TOS 6, I would say.
There are so many great character moments in that movie. In fact, I was very happy that I got to meet Nichelle Nichols in 2015.
Oh, nice.
And I told her about my favorite Uhura moment, which was from Star Trek 3. Specifically, it's that one part where she's in the transporter room with the ensign, and he's like, well, that might be great for you. Your career's winding down, and she's looking down, all of a sudden her eyes just snap up at him. And it's like, uh-oh, you just fucked up, buddy. He's like, he got the Uhura look. I just love that. And then the whole
one of my favorite one of my favorite interviews with Nichelle Nichols I ever saw on TV was she was talking about, I would think at this point in her career, Uhura's chief of all Starfleet communications. She's just telling everyone where to go. Okay.
Yeah, go sit in the closet. But that entire heist sequence was great.
Oh, yes. I still really like the "Don't Call Me Tiny" bit.
Yeah.
George Takei actually fought against that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He didn't think it suited the character. He's like, no, people aren't going to accept this. They love Sulu. He was not anticipating the reaction it got from the crowd when the movie premiered.
Oh.
I think he called up Harv Bennett and was like, Harv, guess what I'm doing now? I'm eating crow and it tastes delicious.
Fair.
But yeah, there's just, and on top of that bit where Kirk gets the news that David's dead, and he does that whole thing where he stumbles backwards and doesn't quite make it into the chair.
Yeah, that was a fluke that made it into the final cut, right?
Yeah, I would say that's probably one of the best bits of acting I've ever seen Shatner do.
Oh yeah, no,
I
it's
agree,
a very
yeah.
very real reaction. You know.
Mm-hmm. You Klingon bastards! You killed my son. It's like you actually felt for the guy right there.
Yeah. Shit.
And it's like I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who didn't see the last Indiana Jones movie, but there's a similar moment in that.
Mm.
You've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about, but you're not going to say anything.
Mm-hmm. I won't.
I liked it.
Oh, Dial of Destiny was great, but
Yeah,
I could
I love
spend
it.
the next 3 hours talking about Indiana Jones, so better not to go there.
Yep.
But yeah, just overall, I thought it was a fun movie, and just and of course, again, Bones with some of the best Bones lines that were also Bones Spock hybrid lines.
Mm-hmm.
To expect one to order poison in a bar is not logical. Where's the logic in offering me a ride home, you idiot?
How can you be deaf with ears like that?
Yeah.
That was an immensely fun bit for Kelly to be in, totally.
And there was also that hot Vulcan sex scene, right?
I don't. Well, are you talking about the one I think you're talking about?
Yeah, it wasn't just Pon Far, it was Pon Farther.
Yeah.
In Star Trek 3, what is this a bit I'm not getting?
Well, basically, Spock is aging because of the Genesis effect.
Right.
Well, what happens to Vulcans every 7 years?
Oh, wait. I vaguely remember this now.
Mm-hmm. Savick knows what to do.
Oh, okay.
And
right.
apparently that led to something that got cut out of Star Trek 4.
Oh.
Right.
Yes.
Why she stays behind on Vulcan.
Right.
Oh. Okay.
She stayed behind on Vulcan, but you didn't find out the reason because the reason was cut.
Well, dang.
You want to guess what the reason was, Mike?
She was Priggers?
Yep.
Okay. Well, fair.
Mm-hmm.
Fair.
So it would have been interesting to see that play out.
Yeah, totally.
So, and as I understand, even though they never specified it in the movie, Savick was supposed to be half Romulan too.
Oh, interesting. Did any of this have any bearing on spoilers? What happened with Savick in Star Trek 6?
How she wasn't in the movie at all.
Uh-oh, wait.
Don't
Okay.
tell me all Vulcans look the same to you.
Come on, Mike.
No. I'm just... Okay, so she wasn't the traitor Vulcan then. Okay.
That was
okay.
Valeris.
Right. God. Wow. I am... See, we have 3 genuine Trek heads here, and I'm just a pretender.
And
what'd you expect?
If I may, just
imagine yourself asking that question, like on a mic in a crowded convention hall on a panel, and imagine the visceral reaction that you would elicit from every fan in the room.
Oh God, I'd be torn to fucking shreds. I would.
Regarding,
I think the original idea was that that was going to be Savick, but then they decided no, she's doing things we can't have Savick do because we like Savick.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember reading a
That
little
makes
more into
sense.
this actually. Gene Roddenberry wanted it to be Savick, and Nick Meyer basically was like, no.
You've got to flip flop, and
I
Nick
do.
wanted it to be Savick, and Gene was like, no, Savick is, she's our gal. She's not going to be doing this stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
story-wise,
right,
it
yeah.
makes sense to use the character you already have established, as opposed to like, let's just make another, protege of Spock who happens to be a woman Vulcan. But yeah, that would a lot of fans would have been upset.
However, Valeris and what she did does give me the opportunity to do this bit from Mystery Science Theater. Kim Cattrall, what the hell, Kim Cattrall?
Yeah, well, but the thing is, if they had used Savick, would we be talking about that in the same way that you're talking about, they brought back Hugh and killed him. They brought back Shelby and killed her.
Right.
Probably.
Would it just be another one of those?
For
So
decades in a row and kill her.
I would not have been happy to
problem
see
with-
that.
the problem with mixing the member berries and the roddenberries is that you're always going to piss somebody off.
Yeah.
And so, I'm kind of glad that like the next show that we're looking at coming out is in the far future, and it's a blank slate other than whatever has been established with Disco.
Agreed.
Totally.
When is that supposed to come out?
Probably wouldn't look for it before the end of this year.
Okay. I mean, I'm mostly just I'm still finishing up Disco and Lower Decks, but I'm very much looking forward to Strange New Worlds. So
Yeah, they got to put season 3 of that out first.
Well, they just dropped a bunch of promo images, so I'm thinking we're going to hear when we get season 3 fairly soon.
I guess I may pass on Section 31.
Yeah, from what I gather, that would be the right move.
You know, I watched that, and I have to say, for a movie called Section 31, there's very little actual Section 31ing going on.
The irony is, I'd normally be all for that because I think that Section 31 is stupid, but it's the name of the movie. You think they should actually focus on what the fucking title promises it will. It just sounds like a lie.
It's I don't know who they made that movie for. I really don't. It felt
Yeah,
like basically a TV movie, like it was supposed to be the pilot for the series.
Yeah.
The series that's never going to happen now, hopefully.
Yeah.
As far as Strange New
I
Worlds,
don't think she's available for like a series anymore. I think they had to adjust the plan to make it one movie.
yeah, it makes sense. Although
Either they can't afford her, or she's not available, or both.
yeah, something like that. Earl, you got any insight on this one?
I think it had everything to do with the Oscar win, and just let's hurry up and get something out. I haven't actually seen it yet. But apparently it rated very well as far as programming on Paramount Plus when
sure
it was
it did.
introduced.
You know, just nobody knew what it was yet.
It's
Very weird.
I don't feel the need to ever rewatch it. So, but I will say that regarding Strange New Worlds, I know how they can conclude the cliffhanger they left off season 2 with.
Yes.
Unleash the Moopsie.
Well, if not that, I will at least be glad for the new addition they teased to be a permanent cast member.
Yes.
So.
I do really hope we do get to see a live action Moopsie at some point.
Man, that'd be all time.
And that is still
Have you
great.
seen the? Someone did a photorealistic rendering of a Moopsie that made it both more cute and more terrifying. It's just like I can just see it's like, oh, this is the last thing some poor grunt in a lab saw before it drank his bones.
I have not seen that.
I
Now
would
kind of want to.
Yeah, I would love to see this. Totally.
Kind of like seeing seeing like The Simpsons rendered as like real people, or
Depending on how it's
like
done.
what did Kirby's feet look like?
Oh, Jesus Christ, man.
Beavis and Butthead as real people.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, so that kind of, oh dear God, it is, yeah, it's a little of both.
Yikes.
It's a little of both.
I've said this twice already, but that looks more Star Warsy than Star Trekky.
But speaking of live action versions of things, do you know, Earl, or anyone, if the character designs for the Lower Decks characters were based on the actors, or, I mean, obviously they'd like, because I think they look really close in live action.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was intentional, but yeah, it did look great when Tawny Newsome and Jack Quaid were in Those Old Scientists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it may have been more of a happy accident than anything, but really, I mean, they could have brought all 4 of them over to live action, and it would have worked fine.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I've seen them dress up because I know they dress up in uniform, like in the uniforms from the show when they go to like conventions and things. Or at least I've seen them do that at least once.
What's the name of the actress who plays Tendi?
Noelle Wells.
Yes, I could totally see her done up in green as Tendi.
Totally.
Don't get too excited, buddy.
It's Tendi. She's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, how did Mariner put it in that one episode? How'd you get so good at the murder bug game? Yeah, and it's interesting how Lower Decks actually explored Orion culture more than any other Star Trek series
Oh
ever.
my gosh. Well, they did some on Discovery, right? A little bit, I
Yeah,
think.
they did a
Yeah,
bit,
Right,
and
you're right.
also little bit early in Enterprise. Well, no, they had that one episode of Enterprise where it's like, the women took over the ship.
yeah.
Oh
Which was
yeah, Bound.
Yeah, and
Great.
Trip's gotta beat the crap out of the other guy because he's acting like he's 14 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, some chips got to fall, I guess, right?
I guess.
Anyway, we've been at this for about 3 hours now, so it's a little after midnight on my end of things. How about you guys?
So have we come to a consensus?
Oh, consensus on what?
Yeah, what exactly?
I'm not sure what we're. I'm not
We're-
sure. I think we were just supposed to talk about Star Trek. I think we've succeeded.
Oh,
Star Trek's really cool, and we still really need it, perhaps now more than ever. That's
Yep.
my guess.
Yeah.
and
There's just so much. Oh, sorry.
Earl, I want to thank you for doing the Star Trekkin logo there in the background.
Yep.
Oh, sure. Surely everyone has that font by now. That's not
I
even the
don't.
official one because the upper corner on the left of the E should be rounded off. So that's like a fan-made bootleg font or something.
Well, it kind of works for this, but you can tell where I cribbed the graphics from, obviously, though, right?
Oh, yeah.
Mike, how about you?
There's just so much to talk about with Trek that like it's really impossible to cover it all. Like we didn't even get into how you found the Deep Space Nine ending to be incredibly disappointing, for one thing. I was
it
almost
was.
hoping to get to rant about that, but
Then I will for a minute. That whole thing with it's like so Cisco's job as the emissary was to knock a guy over a cliff.
Yeah, and he can go back and he can see his wife, but he can't see his son. That just made my blood boil.
And Dr.
Yeah,
Sam Beckett never
yeah.
returned home.
Yeah, that was something that Rob said. Like, he was surprised that Avery Brooks, who's been trying to make Cisco as atypical as possible to negative stereotypes of African American culture, that having a black dad run out of his son was apparently acceptable.
And his new baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, that's. Ugh. And we should have at least seen, like, Kira actually fucking brokering peace and accepting Bajor as part of the Federation.
Which
We
was
didn't see that.
Cisco's
We had
job
to
originally.
Yes, and we just had to settle for Ira Bear just patting himself on the back with this unnecessary like, cliff show bullshit for 5 minutes on end.
Which they couldn't
Like,
even put Jadzia in.
Yeah. Yeah. They totally unpersoned Terry Farrell because God, that fucking Pa rates just that God.
The wacky
I
woo
really like
space wizard
DS9.
stuff.
Don't get me wrong, but it has some really frustrating shit in the last two seasons.
I'm a
That
bit upset about Kai Wynn and
Ducat.
Cot.
Yeah, that was just yeah.
No, they're a lovely couple. They deserve each other.
That is true, at least, yes.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Sure.
I remember watching that in real time and just kind of going, doing the Muttley laugh.
But there was still some good in that episode. It's just that like the last part of it, just like, and they were just about to touch down on the runway, and the tire blew.
Yeah. I mean, with how surprisingly great Damar was in the last season and how that paid off in the ending, they had some real momentum going, and then it just hit a fucking wall at supersonic speed in the last third. It's just-
One of the
quite
greatest
that
things they pulled off. One of the greatest things they pulled off on that series, though, was when you discovered that like a bunch of people, like Bashir and a bunch of other people, had been like replaced,
Yes.
like many episodes earlier. Like they should have done even more with that, but that was amazing.
Yeah. Him and Martok and But
you're watching, you're like, he's kind of off. Like he doesn't seem, he doesn't seem quite right. What's going on?
But
Yeah.
you know, Mike, I think your analogy about hitting a brick wall is wrong. I think it just blew a tire on landing. What hit a brick wall is that Enterprise finale, and I'll never not say that.
Ugh. It hit a fucking power plant. Nuclear power plant is what that one did.
But it's
Jesus.
okay because the holodeck safeties were on.
Shut up. Sorry.
Jeez,
It's late
Mike.
and I'm getting cranky. I'm sorry.
And we can't even really count the original series as having a proper final episode unless you count that as Star Trek 6.
I do, yes. Turnaround Intruder is terrible, but I can't even like call it legitimate
Puffy's
finish.
emotions.
Oh, that was a '60s ass byproduct to say the least. It was.
And,
oh man,
Of course, all good things.
Not one
was
of the
great.
30 good ones.
Yeah, exactly.
it is not. Yes, you're correct.
I'm not leaving until I have my 800 quat loose. But you know, all good things was that was great. I liked Endgame, and really, you should probably not go into potential spoiler territory for the rest of them. Exactly.
I can mute you guys for a minute if you want.
Well, I'll just say this much, Eugene. For Lower Decks, the finale nicely wraps things up.
All right. Yeah,
Totally.
this podcast has definitely got me excited to just push through and finish watching
Yeah,
those. I mean, it's also like there's a long gap between new Star Trek, so I don't necessarily mind like spacing it out a little bit, you know, to enjoy it until Strange New Worlds comes back. But I also have a lot of Prodigy to get through, so.
Yeah,
definitely.
Sounds
You and
good.
Mike both. So
totally.
And Prodigy is one where they leave it off where they could pick it up, but if they don't, it's cool. They land it at a good spot.
yeah, that's true.
Good. That is the least that I ask out of endings, that they can work as endings even if they weren't planned as it. As a rule, I kind of hate cliffhangers because it's just such a gamble to do that, and then you just blow it as terribly as so much in fiction has. Like, that's something else to get into.
Hey, you know what did need a cliffhanger? Splatterhouse 2010.
Yes,
Does that have a
like
cliffhanger?
that one.
That had a
Like that
cliffhanger
one.
ending.
That never got followed up upon, so...
I mean, yet there's still time.
Well, it's only
I
been
wish,
15
man.
years.
I wish, man, but I'm
How much
not
time passed
in the
between
breath.
the last Splatterhouse game and 2010?
17 years.
Yeah, so there's still time. Never say never.
Yeah.
I never thought we'd see the crew of the Enterprise D together again. Like
That's a good point. All right, I'll give
on
you
the
that.
Enterprise D. Like
Oh yeah.
Fair.
All right, I'll give you that one. So that said, I think we're going to call it a wrap for tonight.
Okay.
So thanks to everyone who joined us to talk some Trek. And rest assured, we did read your comments and we do appreciate them all. And yeah, you're right about that, Prime. It's, yeah.
Take it from us. Yes, you're on the money with that.
Uh-huh.
Really good vault.
So that being said, thank you, Eugene. Thank you, Earl, for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely. This has been
bring
fun.
us together.
Yeah, it's been great having you guys. I feel inadequate in your presence because you have been much more entrenched in actual Trek than I've been. I'm just a nerd who made the best out of a bad year with it. But
And
I guess that's admirable in some way.
I'll just say,
That's a good use for the franchise, though.
yeah.
Thank you. Yep. Yep. Can't agree with that.
All right. As far as the next Dyer's Place that's coming up, I am currently trying to put together one about Atari 2600 homebrews, which,
Nice.
if I can pull it off, will feature a special guest who actually creates some of said homebrews.
That's
Very
exciting.
nice.
Yes.
Let
So,
me know about that because I'll advertise it. I'm in the Discord with the Homebrew Game Club, and there are a lot of Atari fanatics in there, and of course the focus is on homebrew. So I'll make sure that they're aware of it. as
Oh.
well. So hopefully people will drop into the chat and there'll be a nice conversation going, and maybe they'll boost the signal a little bit too.
Absolutely. And I can tell you one thing about the person I'm trying to get for this stream: the homebrews they make are all A+, knock it out of the park homebrews.
Oh, I think I know who you're
Now,
talking
are
about.
these homebrews?
You just might, Earl.
Okay, because there are folks making homebrews now who made original Atari games back in the day. So if you're I'm wondering if it's one of those.
No, he didn't make games back in the day. He just played them like the rest of us.
Okay.
But what he's doing now is just nothing short of amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how that goes. You'll hear about it. It'll be within the next couple of weeks. That much I'll let you know. So
Awesome.
And of course, Mike.
Yep.
You were back. You'll be back for that one. And you'll continue being back for the foreseeable future, I hope.
Hooray! I'm yours forever.
All right, everybody. You all have a good night. We'll see you next time.
Thanks so much. Hey, folks.
Take care, everyone.